We had separate bank accounts, so we can take, well, what you want from all of that. The list that you gave is unbelievable. 124,000 in a camper van, Fortnum and Mason's picnic hampers, a couple of lawnmowers, one for 3,000 quid, three Davic Savile umbrellas, £970. The list goes. Oh, a wine coaster. I needed to look up what a wine coaster was. 3,500 quid. So the list goes on.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, serial murder, really depraved crimes, it's quite clear to me that the usual considerations around whether you should be lenient because of this context, whether or not there should be more room for rehabilitation in that context, just don't apply. From the simple commonsensical basis that if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society. I don't want to take that risk.
If these kids genuinely, you know, and they are kids, everyone involved is a kid. I mean, it's just absolutely travesty. If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the street.
Yeah. So there's now a label for children who skip school. You know, parents can't sort it out. In the old days, I used to think that skipping school was you know, against the law. You know, and parents used to be taken to court. Well, no longer anymore. They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home. Again, I keep saying, you know, on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, universities. Let's get everyone going to university. Well, I think a fundamental job of education is to prepare children for the society they're going to live in a positive way, i.e. prepare them for a job. You've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
Henry Novak's last words were, "I can't breathe," as he was handcuffed, having been stabbed not only in the front but in the back as well, you know. Okay, he stabbed him in the chest twice, stabbed him in the face once, stabbed him in the back of the leg twice. I mean, what an attack. Let's wait and see what sentence this vile piece of garbage gets. Of course, none of it of which will bring back dear Henry. May his soul rest in peace.
It's just so shocking, Pete, you know. I mean, this is... We're so used to criticising the police for mistakes. This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock this morning. And whether you are watching us on YouTube or your connected device listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, thank you, as always, for your company. Lots to talk about. There's an awful lot going on JK's show this morning as well, and plenty going on our show as well. And if you could miss anything, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, well, the Chief Constable of Hampshire Police, the force that arrested Henry Novak, has apologised for the student's handcuffing as he lay dying. This, though, comes as both the Prime Minister and the head of that police force say, oh, no, there's absolutely no two-tier policing and no anti-white bias at all in the police force. But officers in the force have reported that they felt controlled and pressured during diversity training on racism, unconscious bias, privilege and allyship. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are piling pressure on the police watchdog to have full investigation into the officers who arrested the murdered teenager. They are currently being treated as witnesses, not suspects, and although are not on frontline duties, have not been suspended, although a number have actually resigned, but we're told over different reasons. I'd like to say that Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, will be live with us in the studio just after midday today, so do please stay tuned for that. That, of course, after Nigel Farage was on the Breakfast Show. Now, he yesterday warned that rioting after Henry Novak's murder could be the beginning of wider unrest. He was barracked and jeered in the House of Commons by MPs on all sides, accused of stoking up division. But isn't he just telling the truth? And it's amazing, actually, how many of the politicians on the left who were saying exactly that sort of thing when the Black Lives Matter riots were happening, and far, far worse devastation and even deaths resulted from the BLM riots in 2020. They were busy on the left praising those riots, not even not condemning them, as many have complained about Nigel Farage not doing. Plus, we're going to be talking about defence spending and that report that suggests that, and apparently is going to be accepted by the government, NHS staff should stop wearing pro-Palestinian badges and indeed any political insignia when they're at work. I mean, why did anyone ever think that was a good idea in the first place? I don't want to know your political views. I want to know whether I've got cancer or a broken leg. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to talk about all of that and plenty more besides. We're going to be taking your calls. I particularly want to hear from you. I'm continuing the calls on the Henry Novak case, but the Prime Minister and Police Chief denying there is two-tier policing after the Henry Novak murder, but officers in that very police force claiming they felt controlled by DEI anti-racism training. What's your reaction to that? And do you think we're ever going to get rid of that culture, that supposedly anti-racism, which is just racism by another name, culture, and this woke stuff that has just permeated, poisoned, I would say, our entire public sector, and frankly, an awful lot of big companies as well. I want to know your thoughts on that. Also, what do you make of Nigel Farage being barracked in the House of Commons? He gets a rare question as the leader of the Reform Party automatically at PMQs, and he was condemned for not personally condemning the violence in Southampton at that protest the other night, but also condemned for apparently politicising and dividing people, basically against the wishes of Henry Novak's family, by speaking out about the issue of Henry Novak's murder and the treatment by the police and anti-bias training and all of that. But isn't it his job as a politician to take up an issue which is, let's be honest, clearly a political issue? I want to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch, which you already knew. You can also get in touch by text on 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost one standard network rate message. Delighted to say joining me today is Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
It's not about...
Is there? I don't think there's anything going on.
Still, I mean, it's 10 years, still waiting for a quiet news day. We obviously actually said it, oh, of course, it's going to be a quiet news. No, never, it's never a quiet news day. Sometimes I wish it was a quiet news day because the stories you're talking about are so horrific. Look, it goes without saying any normal human being with a heart and a soul couldn't have watched that horrific video put out, the body cam footage put out earlier this week by Hampshire Police, showing how police officers reacted to being told by the murderer, it would transpire, Vikram Digwa of Henry Novak, that he hadn't been stabbed, and Henry Novak saying repeatedly he had been stabbed and he couldn't breathe. The video footage is just shivers down the spine, turns your stomach. A lot of people saying, like me, couldn't sleep after watching it. It was so horrific. But we need to talk about it, even though Henry Novak's father, after the sentencing on Monday, said, you know, he doesn't want division or hatred or tension to be spread. Talking about this, talking about the problems behind why the police officers acted the way they did, talking about, you know, how we have two-tier policing, how people perceive it and how real it is. Those are very much debates that people are allowed to have and actively should have in a democracy, and certainly it is the job of our politicians to do so. But what do you make of, just initially, first of all, both the Prime Minister and this police chief, who looks like he's out of central casting for a woke police chief these days in Hampshire, saying that, you know, we do not have two-tier policing. Absolutely, categorically, we do not have two-tier policing. When an awful lot of people, I'm certainly included in them, think that we do.
Well, I'm sorry, we've seen so many examples of two-tier policing when it comes to dealing with so many different issues. This is just yet another example that the police are being accused of. If you look at the way they've dealt with the pro-Palestinian marches as opposed to the pro-Israeli marches as opposed to everything else. There's examples of two-tier...
the Kingdom marches.
Yes, exactly. There's two-tier policing across the board. And you know, within policing, it's supposed to be without fear or favour. Yet you read I read the NPCC, National Police Chiefs Council, guidance on approach to racial approach, and it says treat everyone differently. Well, you can't. That is then creating favour whenever you get unconscious human bias into things. And we're getting the Hampshire Police turning around saying that they came away from the training that they were given feeling that they had to treat people differently.
Well, not just feeling that. This is for them to say people are not treated differently. The DI guidance handed down by the National Council of Police Chiefs explicitly states that does not mean treating people the same or being colourblind.
Yeah.
It requires people to treat people differently based on their ethnicity and other categories.
But again, whenever it comes down to defining racism, it talks of colour, and it's bringing skin colour into racism and everything else.
Well, that is what racism is, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I've got an accent. I have been racially abused. I was racially abused for many, many years because I came from Northern Ireland. I was called a
paddy.
Well, not just called a paddy and a bog trotter, and because those are the common sort of things. You can laugh those off. But I was called a beeping terrorist, a terrorist supporter, a murderer.
So again, it's not just about skin colour, it's about, I suppose, ethnic group, nationality.
It's about different groupings and all the rest of it.
Here's my thing. I can understand why it says you treat people differently. I get that. If people have different needs, again, it's one of the reasons why women need single spaces for toilets and things, because women don't commit sex crimes, biological violence against men, but it does happen the other way round. There's a reason why. So you do actually have reasons why you discriminate, why you treat people differently. If someone is disabled, if someone is blind or deaf, or you would treat people who has learning disabilities, you would have to treat them differently from someone who's able-bodied and who was fully competent. That makes sense. I don't see why you need to treat someone who is black or brown or white differently. You should treat everyone with respect.
Correct.
When you arrive at the scene of a crime, you don't trust someone more because they are Asian or black or white. You don't trust someone less because of those same things. I mean, look, there's loads could be said about the poor training of these police officers, but quite clearly we know that police officers at the College of Policing, and frankly in an awful lot of their schooling, given the age of these officers, judging by the cameras that we can see, that actually, they are imbued with this stuff from an early age, and they are just taught from word go. You must take all this into account instead of judging the situation as it is. But the fear, and lots of police officers have told me privately, people have spoken openly about the fear that they have that if they are ever accused of racism, their career is over. That's the word. You can be incompetent. You can be corrupt. No. Racism is the worst thing. Now, that word has lost its meaning for a lot of us. I was certainly raised to believe that racist was the worst thing you could be called. Now, I'm just like, water off duck's back. I do think racism is an appalling, awful thing and a sign of abject stupidity as well, because if you're judging people on that, you're definitely stupid, as well as immoral. But because they call people who voted for Brexit racist, and then at that point it becomes a meaningless word. But there's no doubt at all. We've got this report in the Times today that a large number of officers, when polled in Hampshire Police for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, they'd been given courses like everyone in the public sector has, and by the way, many private companies have as well. Mandatory diversity training. We have mandatory diversity training in this building. I struggle with some of it, I'm not going to lie. There was going to be unconscious bias training. As I said, pointed out yesterday, I have no unconscious biases. They're all very, very conscious and fact-based. I'm unconsciously biased against unconscious bias training. I mean, again, this stuff is absolutely not... it's critical race theory or the trans ideology, unconscious bias. These things are theories that are utterly disproven, no factual basis to them whatsoever, and completely, I would say, morally wrong as well. But these courses taught the constabulary officers and staff about racism, unconscious bias, privilege, and the importance of being an ally. So you have to not just not be racist or not be a transphobe or not be a homophobe. You have to actively not just say, but show, with your lanyards, with your badges, with your behaviour at all times that you are none of these things. I mean, I assume people aren't racist or homophobic or transphobic or sexist. I assume that all the time. I find just giving people the benefit of the doubt tends to work quite well. But a survey found that 1 in 7 officers and staff felt controlled and pressured to adopt certain ideas in the sessions, basically to actually say the right thing. Same number thought mistakes would have been held against me, and a fifth said they feared being rejected for saying the wrong thing. Now, this survey, whoever carried it out, and presumably it was anonymous, but one hopes it's anonymous, otherwise, but it was carried out following the course titled the Inclusion Matters Foundation course. The fact that anyone was even brave enough to say they weren't happy with it, I'm going to guess that at least double that would have had problems with it. We've got this, it is imbued in not just the police, NHS, teaching, civil service, it's across the board, and it's not just on race, it's on all these other issues. I think that, by the way, the IOPC, who are investigating what problem this is, they also require their staff to go on these courses, right? So, by definition, everyone involved, the civil servants who are briefing the ministers, who are commenting on this, are forced to go on these courses. How on earth do you think we're ever going to root this out?
We're not going to be able to root it out unless whenever horrific incidents like this happen and the judicial process has been taken to its conclusion,
and it's exposed,
and it's properly exposed, and then it has to be debated in a public manner, so that our politicians understand where things are going wrong, the strength of feeling behind it, how to get things right.
Do you think they do?
No, they haven't got a clue, and this is where Keir Starmer yesterday was trying to close down. Nigel Farage brought up some very, very valid points.
Yep.
The one mistake that he made was that he did not condemn the rioting that there was in.
His argument, I understand, is he's not responsible for the violence. He doesn't have to get that goes without saying. I'm like,
so condemn it.
So condemn it. He brought it right. I thought that was a massive mistake. Nigel Farage doesn't make mistakes like that, which is why he was doing it deliberately. And again, I wonder if this is more about a by-election coming up than it is about anything else and placing. But there's no doubt at all there has been a deliberate and concerted attempt by the Labour government to shut down debate on this because it makes them all uncomfortable. Keir Starmer, I thought, was the one who was most politicising it. Whenever he does his when you said in PMQs yesterday, and his answer was rage. Specifically, in contrast to what the father, Mark Novak, had said, he didn't want division, tension, or violence. But nothing Nigel Farage is saying. He's talking about cold rage. He got an apology from the BBC from Matt Chorley for repeatedly in an interview with notes in front of him saying it was white cold rage. Now, I actually misquoted Nigel a couple of times yesterday, but I wasn't like my whole interview. It was in conversation. I corrected myself each time, but Matt Chorley's interview was about this quote, and he was misquoting, which tells you everything about the BBC. With all those production stuff, they still can't get anything right.
Let me read you a different quote. 31st of May 2020, from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. The death of George Floyd has rightly ignited fury and anguish, not just in the USA, across the world. Rightly ignited fury. Nigel Farage didn't come out with language that was as strong as that, and the quote goes on to virtually turn around and say that it's right and proper that people are protesting against the police. We didn't see Keir Starmer standing up and criticising the Mayor of London. No, we saw him go and take the knee with Angela Rayner, his deputy.
Absolutely.
That's for someone 4,015 miles away who was a convicted criminal who got killed by a foreign police force.
Around the same time, June 2020. A letter to the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson at the time, said about Black Lives Matter. Many of our own black citizens were seeing these images, George Floyd, also feel palpable anger and anxiety. What steps is the government taking to reassure black communities in the UK? Guess who wrote that? Keir Starmer.
So
but back then it was justifiable anger. It was understandable, and it should be I suppose not pandered to, and it should be dealt with. People feeling anger about watching that video. I mean, I felt revulsion, anger, upset, sadness. But people are wrong, and we're always told, aren't we, after every terror attack as well? Don't look back in anger. I'm sodding well do. I'm very angry at people who blow up little girls at pop concerts. I think not being angry at that makes you a bit weird, frankly.
Or stab little girls in dance classes or anything else. Everything that comes out of our Prime Minister's mouth proves time after time after time he's two-tier Keir.
He's two-tier Keir. He doesn't get it, and he is the one politicising this.
Correct.
Whenever politicians want us to stop talking about something or insist that everything has to be non-political, and when even when he's like praising Kemi Badenoch, who's on the show in a couple of hours' time, that always makes me just go, my little spidey instincts go, oh, what's going on? And they're trying to shut it down. They're trying to shut it down.
And they've done the same with the rape gang cases. They've done the same with the speculation around Southport.
Racist, bigot, far-right bandwagon jumper.
They do the same with everything. And this is where I don't think what Keir Starmer realises, and Nigel Farage does realise, is the strength of feeling that there is across the country. And I'm concerned. You know, there should not be rioting on the streets.
No.
There should not be violence. But I'm concerned listening to people who I consider balanced and at that level of community where they don't get up and protest about anything. I can hear them starting to get very angry in what they're saying
and also,
and suggest
do you know
protest.
what? Also, I think really crucially, Benedict Spence was sitting in that seat yesterday. He made a very valid point. I was saying I think that peaceful protests make a much stronger message. I mean,
yes,
they do.
Yeah, very much so.
He disagreed. He said, actually, no, the message that people have learned in this country is that actually the authorities only listen to the groups and communities who either are violent or threaten violence.
Well,
look at Maccabi Tel Aviv and the decision there. Look at the pro-Palestinian marches. Look at the riots we've seen. August 2011, when we had those riots, there was so much talk. I mean, your David Lammy's and others saying, we need to listen to these poor young black men. Sorry, they were rioting about Mark Duggan, a wrong-un who I'd have happily put a bullet in his head any day of the week to make the country a safer place, frankly, legally, only when it was allowed legally. Thank God. I want to shake the hand of the police officer who shot him dead and put us all out of our misery. I'm sorry, and I've said that. I said that at the time, and I will say this to this day. Same with Chris Cabba, absolutely. Oh, but our hearts go out. Sod your hearts going out to these people. And yet, the only people who are not allowed to be angry are let's face it, the white majority community, because they are regarded as thugs.
Yeah. If we put what Keir Starmer is doing today into historical context and look at how he's dealt with Northern Ireland, they're pandering to the terrorists. And it started with Tony Blair giving the on-the-run letters. It started with what happened through the Belfast Agreement, the Good Friday Agreement, and we're now saying our veterans being prosecuted. And we've got two-tier approach there. This is within his DNA. He's grown up the whole way through his political life with this as what he wants to do.
DEI training is in his blood, for goodness sake. So that's all part of. No, you've got to remember a whole load of these people, the civil servants and these chief police officers, the politicians on this side of the debate. They genuinely have taken that. They've drunk the Kool-Aid about how Britain, Western history is terrible. White people are the oppressors. Anyone of colour is the oppressor. I mean, again, it's offensive to both people, by the way, because you're making everybody of non-white colour a victim. I mean, how insulting is that? Frankly, they believe this stuff. Yeah. These are the people who believe that trans people are somehow, facing repression and things. They believe this stuff. This is their religion. It's up there with climate change and net zero. They believe it. They don't need facts. It doesn't matter how many facts you present. They don't care about the facts. It's virtually a religion to them, and this is a problem. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch. 03444 499 1000. We could bang on about this forever. We could. I also just want to talk about this report from Lord Mann, who has John Mann, wonderful guy, and he's carried out this report looking into basically worries of anti-Semitism in the NHS, and he's the government's independent advisor. Several recommendations he made in a review, but basically NHS staff could be barred from wearing all political badges on their uniforms, including, crucially, pro-Palestinian symbols. He said, wearing an pro-Israeli symbol as well. And he just says, look, the NHS should not be a place where you bring in your views, and the stronger the views, the bigger the problem. He says, an I support Palestine badge or anything like that is a problem for some people, just in the same way as an I support Israel badge is a problem for some people. Don't wear either. And we've got this a horrific situation where not only are Jewish NHS staff being targeted with anti-Semitism by their own colleagues and sometimes patients as well. People really, terrified of actually speaking out or even identifying themselves as Jewish. And then we've got patients, and I've spoken to people myself who said, the patients who they've gone in and they've literally taken off anything that I can identify them as Jewish because they are worried, because they've seen those videos that are online about doctors and nurses saying, they Jews should die. Well, hey, I'm a patient in your care and I'm quite sick. I'm worried, that I might die in your care. This is not an unfact-based fear. Whoever thought it was a good idea at any point that someone working for the public sector in any job at all should should basically promote their political views. I don't want to know which party you vote for. I don't want to know which political international cause you support. I don't want to see your rainbow lanyard. I'm assuming you're not a transphobe or a homophobe. That's a given. Otherwise, you shouldn't be employed by anybody. Why are you promoting any of this at all in your uniform?
No one in public service should be wearing any badge that shows any political or group affiliation at all. And I remember in the NHS, my mother was a nurse. I've known a few nurses, and as the NHS has gone on, when my mother went through her nurse training, that you weren't allowed to wear makeup or jewellery or anything else. The uniform had to be. You went onto the ward completely void of anything apart from your uniform. And we have to get back to those sorts of standards.
But everywhere, teachers, anyone working in the public sector, any service where you're on my taxes pays for their wages, and that include transport staff, and ultimately that stuff's all subsidised by us. Any service that we don't have a choice about using, because I can choose. If Asda want to allow all their staff to wear pro-Palestinian badges, well, fine, I won't shop at Asda. I'll shop somewhere else. I mean, I want all of it. I don't want to know the views of individuals. I also don't want to know the view of the company. I don't care Ben and Jerry's. In fact, we don't have Ben and Jerry's in the house. I won't have it in the house. I won't give them my money because of their outrageous lies about Israel. I try and stick Waitrose, my local supermarket. Good God, I mean, the obsession with rainbows. I mean, I don't want to know about it. It's not in. Are you obeying the law? Well, of course you are, because you have to obey the law. Well, apparently not in some cases. We just want to be able to go and get get treated for an illness or have your leg fixed if your leg's broken, or you want to go to school, or you want to go buy a product at a supermarket. I don't want to know your sodding politics. I don't care.
But in particular areas where you're dealing with those that are very vulnerable, and therefore in the health service, in schools. And other places like that where you've got healthcare workers out in the community and all the rest of it. Because if you're dealing with vulnerable people, you can influence them. You can subconsciously groom them into a bias. Or you can intimidate them and create fear. That's just wrong.
You'll be surprised to know I tell off everyone who wears a pro-Palestinian badge. These people sport them on the train home, and I always say, it doesn't make you look like a good person. Trust me. But I mean, if you want to wear it, you get commented on. It's simple as that. 10:26 is the time. We're going to take a break. Love to hear your thoughts on that, as well as, of course, Prime Minister and the police chief denying there is two-tier policing after the Henry Novak murder. But officers and the actual police force, where we saw this horrific treatment of Henry Novak, claiming they felt controlled by their DEI anti-racism training. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:29 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Peter is on the line in Suffolk. Hello, Peter, what do you want to say?
Hi there, Julia.
Hi.
Stop calling it training. It's not training, it's indoctrination.
Very good point.
I was a Metropolitan Police officer for 32 years. I retired as temporary chief inspector. That's an important part. Temporary chief inspector. One of my last things I had to do 3 months ago, went on a DEI training course.
Yeah.
To be lectured. Now, after you got the police trainers, and then they brought in 2 members of the public, community leaders from certain communities. We were all white, and they proceeded to tell us that we were white privileged, that we were all racist, inherently racist, and you have to agree to that.
If you don't agree to it, then you've got an unconscious bias. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, the problem I had is a lot of the information they were telling us wrong.
Yeah.
Britain didn't start the slave trade.
Oh, God, all that nonsense.
Yeah. And that the black man is oppressed, that the Crusaders desiccated the Jerusalem, and
I think they were trying to rescue Jerusalem, were they not?
Well,
that was actually the whole point of the Crusades, so that Christians could go back, go to Jerusalem.
I think it was good and bad on both sides. But the problem we've got nowadays is our youngsters are indoctrinated from school, the college, the university, the police. I actually certainly don't blame the 3 officers that were at the scene.
Interesting.
Yes, they should have done things differently. They should have gone there with open minds and thought, what's this whole scene? Whereas they were given a racist element, and immediately their brain, which they have been indoctrinated to, clicks into, this is a racist incident, I must deal with it as a racist incident. Stop.
Yeah.
And I've been, as a young PC, I arrested people that called me.
Yeah.
Oh, I've called you, you can't arrest me. Well, hold on a minute, I've actually investigated it and you are in the wrong.
Yeah.
They didn't investigate, and I would suspect that 90% of officers would do exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
The problem we've got is the College of Policing, from the bottom up, all the senior officers nowadays have a certain mindset.
Yes, because you can't become a senior officer unless you do either have that mindset or pretend to have that mindset. Here's my question.
They are cloned.
Do they actually believe this stuff, or do they just have to pretend to keep their jobs?
Many believe, because I go back to Stalin and Russia. And the fact is, give me a child at the age of 7 and he's mine forever. That is what they're doing. And they may believe it.
I think that was the Jesuits, by the way, but it's true. You just get them young. But that's it. It's happening in our schools, happening in our universities. We can see it, the sort of things they riot about these days or get protest about. How do we get rid of it? What do we do? Can we get rid of it?
Well, it's a complete mind change. And it goes from government, and I saw that with Keir Starmer yesterday, trying to shut down it doesn't matter what Nigel Farage said or not. Their whole rationale is stop the conversation.
Yeah.
They've done it with Bradford, with the grooming gangs.
Yeah.
They stop it They stop it, and I'll give you the one that goes back. Notting Hill Carnival, officer told, you don't arrest for drug dealing, cannabis.
Yeah.
We'll go in for knives outside the carnival area, but inside the carnival area, we'll just monitor and we'll do something later.
Yeah.
If that had been a football match, go in hard.
Yeah.
Go back to the old BNP marches and the left wing. BNP, go in hard.
Yeah.
Left wing, go softly. It's always been there, but it's got worse. And everything is seen through this prism of race, which is wrong.
Yeah.
It isn't. You go to any other country, I've been to many countries, and they don't deal with race like they do with it here.
No, absolutely.
No, not at all.
Just finally, when did it start? This attitude. Is it all posed? It's not, because it started before Black Lives Matter, didn't it? They went. I mean, it's been on turbocharged since then. But
when Stephen Lawrence was murdered, it was all about race then. And the fact is, the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist, and we all looked at each other and said, "Well, actually, no, we're not institutionally racist."
Yeah.
And then they say you're white privilege. Well, I was brought up in a boarding school, which was a orphanage.
Yeah. Feel that privilege, Peter. Feel that privilege.
And I didn't get the chance to go to university. Yeah. What I made is I made by myself.
Yeah.
And it's this erasing of history and the inconvenient truth of history.
Peter, such an amazing call. I wish you were still in the police force. I wish you were a chief constable. I think if you'd be the chief constable of Hampshire Police, what would happen to Henry Novak might have been very, very different. So appreciate that. Thank you very much. There's loads of other calls on the board. I'm going to go to another break, though, because I've got to speak to my next guest. I don't want to keep him waiting, but I promise, George, I know you're waiting on the line. I promise I'm going to get to use my first call in the next section. 10:35 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:37 is the time. Let's go straight to my next guest, Brendan O'Neill. He's chief political writer at Spiked. A very good morning to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
Hi, I'm sure you were listening to that fascinating call from a former temporary chief police officer. Wish he was one of those people who was still in charge, because he sounded like a voice of sanity and reason compared to the ones we see who've sent, well, straight out central casting of what a chief police officer are now are these days, after all the diversity training. Question I'm putting to our audience, the Prime Minister is saying we don't have two-tier policing. He's absolutely categorical about that. The police chief in Hampshire, where Henry Novak died, he denies there's two-tier policing. There's not, it's not racism against white people. But officers who had training in, and again, as my last guest pointed out, it's indoctrination rather than like voluntary training. They say they felt controlled by their anti-racism training. Do you think it's possible that we're ever going to be able to root this stuff out of our public sector?
I think it is. I think it's going to take a long time, but I think we're going through a really interesting moment in Britain right now, which is that millions of ordinary people are waking up to the problems that we face, and the political class are still denying them. Yeah. That is really what's come to the fore over the past 48 hours since Vikram Digva was found guilty, was sentenced for this disgusting atrocity. People's eyes are being opened to so many problems within the state, and it is so clear now that the police have been trained expressly expressly to approach issues with racial glasses, to see whites as potentially problematic, to see non-whites as more sympathetic. That is what they have been trained to do. We can all see the documents. You know, Hampshire Police itself, which is the police force that attended this horrible crime, they have a police action plan that directly cites the George Floyd killing and says this makes us devote ourselves to the cause of anti-racism.
But also in black, I was saying there's no intuitive policing. In black and white, the National Association of Police Chiefs document and Hampshire document explicitly states you treat different races differently. I mean, they're denying the thing that they've put in black and white in their own documents.
It's right there. And, you know, the problem for them in 2026 is that they can't control information anymore. We have access to it. People are sharing it online in their millions. My WhatsApp groups are buzzing all day long with people who don't work in the media, don't work in politics, normal people with normal jobs who are sharing this stuff and saying, have you seen this document?
And you're right. And this wouldn't be being debated. The attempt by the Prime Minister to shut down debate on this, I mean, absolutely unquestionable what that's been going on. But if we didn't have X for free debate on this and sharing and that video, if we didn't have, you know, talk and, you know, and say, oh, rival, GB News, and we didn't have the Reform Party, and this is not me holding a candle for any particular party. We've got Hemi Bade, not the Tory leader, on after midday today. But if we didn't have a party like that speaking out about this and saying what other politicians are not saying, whether people like it or not, this would not be at the forefront of the news. And the reason I know this is after that, seeing that video on Monday night, I messaged my team and went, first thing in the morning, went, this is 100% the only story in town right now. I was so sickened and horrified by that video. And I watched, I've got a bank of screens, as you know, in our studio, all the different channels on, just, you know, what's going on. I watched for hour upon hour as they talked about the Mandelson files, which, yes, we talked about the day before we seen the video. They had Peter Murrell, the Nicola Sturgeon's ex, in court. They were covering Ukraine. They were covering anything and everything other than a cursory mention of this video. It was only by mid-afternoon they caught up and went, oops, we may have missed a story, because they didn't think it was a story.
Absolutely. And you know what they're all talking about now? They've switched very quickly from the horror in Southampton to the horror, the supposed horror of Nigel Farage's words, the emotions that ordinary people are feeling. You know, they're all talking now about the dangers of rage. You know, when I saw Farage talk about pure cold rage, I was delighted that he said that, because that is exactly what I felt when I watched that body cam footage. I was consumed by rage. I was so angry. First, the savagery of the killing itself. We know that we now have new details. We know that Vikram Digwa basically lynched this boy and taunted him for 10 minutes and said, you haven't been stabbed, bro. Refused to call any help for him. And then the police eventually do come, drag him across the gravel, handcuff him, and basically call him a liar. It is beyond repulsive, and people are very angry. But what we have now is this attempt to police our anger, this attempt to temper our emotions. That is what Keir Starmer is doing. He's trying to crush the fury of ordinary people, but it is perfectly right and proper and good to be angry about this case.
Exactly. And again, Nigel Farage was very clear. He was talking about cold rage, which is very different from hot rage. Now, he's been condemned for not condemning the violence in Southampton. I understand from talking to, you know, colleagues of his that, you know, their view is, well, you know, he's not responsible for the violence. It goes without saying. But, I mean, I think personally that was a politically foolish decision, but there's no doubt at all. A lot of people are very, very angry at the Prime Minister trying to shut him down and blatantly, openly in PMQs yesterday, playing politics himself, trying to use the words of Henry Novak's father, Mark Novak, after the sentencing, who said he didn't want Henry's death to be used to stoke division or tension or violence. But you know, his words are not. You know, his death is not being used to stoke that. What we want to see. What I think Kemi Badenoch is coming on the show later, and what Nigel Farage, and I think you and I think most of our audience. What we want to see is this to end, but it to end with this not happening to another boy because of this awful divisive policing. I must say, just had a breaking news. Keir Starmer has now, I mean, he's accusing everyone of this. He's accused Elon Musk, his big mate. He's accused Elon Musk of trying to whip up division, in his words, in the UK over Henry Novak's murder, and said Britain needs to assert, he says, who we are as reasonable, tolerant people. I mean, Mate, we are asserting who we are as reasonable, tolerant people, and what we are not reasonable, tolerant about is intolerance and unreason.
Yeah, absolutely right. I couldn't have said it better myself. You know, it is not Farage that is using this horrible crime as a weapon. It's Starmer that's using it as a shield. He is exploiting this death. He's exploiting the words of the family. And we all saw that incredibly dignified, passionate statement by Henry's father. He's exploiting that as a shield to protect his government and public sector policy from the criticism of ordinary people. He is the one exploiting this death to guard his own class from the anger of ordinary people. That's what's happening right now. And, you know, I completely agree with you. I think Kemi Badenoch and Zia Youssef as well, I think they are currently the two most impressive politicians that we have. Both of them have made incredibly strong cases that they don't want to exploit this terrible crime to stoke division. They want to get rid of division, a division that has been imposed on us by the woke elites who divide us according to race, who have trained the police to see whites as a problem and blacks as sympathetic. It's those divisions, that two-tier morality that people want to dismantle. We want to bring more unity to the country. They want to enforce less of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the extraordinary thing. It's this idea, it's the same whether it's the grooming gangs or any of the other cases, that somehow talking about it is the problem. Somehow identifying it, somehow demanding action on it is the problem. And that's what's going to stoke community, you know, division, as opposed to the actual crime itself, the actual bad behaviour, the actual bad attitudes themselves that are stoking the division.
It's always the instinct of the elites that we currently live under is always to police the emotions of ordinary people after something like this.
Don't look back in anger, Brendan. Do not look back in anger. How dare you?
It's that all over again. Their response to the Manchester Arena atrocity was to police our emotions. Don't be Islamophobic. Don't get too angry. Don't say this and that. Their response to the grooming gang scandal, when it was finally revealed, was to say, well, curb your language, watch what you say, don't be too intense about it because you might cause division. And now they're saying the same thing after the atrocity in Southampton. Their response every single time is try to put a lid on ordinary people's anger. That's not going to work this time. This time, I think that lid is going to be blown off because people want questions to answers. And more importantly than that, they want radical change in this country.
They really, really do. There's no doubt at all about that. I mean, not everyone. A lot of people are quite happy with the system. I don't know if they've junked the Kool-Aid on this, but when Nigel Farage warned yesterday that the Novak riots in Southampton are just the beginning, could just be the beginning of wider unrest. Now, that he's been accused of stoking up tension, but of course, I mean, making a prediction is not stoking it up or causing it or anything. Do you think that he's right?
I think he might be right, actually, and I say that with regret because those scenes in Southampton were pretty ugly. And, you know, let's be clear about what happened. I think most of the people, the majority of the people at Southampton police station who were chanting, "I can't breathe," they were good, decent people who are
making a very valid point.
A very valid point, and they're very angry. And you have all these snooty leftists condemning them. But the left marched to the US Embassy in May 2020 chanting, "I can't breathe," because those were George Floyd's last words as well. The breakaway mob that threw bins at coppers, blaming Farage for that is obscene, actually, because if you look at the footage, some of those idiots have got Restore Britain T-shirts on. Not all of them, but some of them have.
Individuals are responsible for their own individual actions, as far as I'm concerned.
And
no one makes me go out and riot.
Yeah, exactly right. They made a choice. And anyone who knows anything about the right now, they will know that those kinds of people do not like Nigel Farage. That's a given. But the thing is that I think he's right. I think there is going to be more instability and I think there's going to be more tension. That is really regrettable, but it's a consequence of the state just not listening to people, not making the changes that we want, not taking our concerns seriously about borders, immigration, social instability, crime. They've ignored us for years, and some people are going to make themselves heard in a way that's a bit problematic.
Well, and again, if you ignore democratic votes for things and peaceful calls for things, you don't necessarily leave people feeling that they have any more peaceful options. I'm not in any way condoning or inciting. I just think that perhaps they shouldn't be surprised if and when it happens. And by the way, they were quite happy to think it was justified when it was Black Lives Matter riots, weren't they? Brendan O'Neill, always so good to talk to you, Chief Political Writer at Spike. Thank you so much for joining us. Ingram, can I bring you in specifically on Keir Starmer? Now accusing, I mean, again, this isn't playing to the gallery for his voters. This will there'll be pats on the back from all the people with all the right flags in their Twitter bios, won't they? He's accused Elon Musk of trying to whip up division on X in the UK over Henry Novak's murder and said Britain needs to assert who we are as reasonable, tolerant people.
Keir Starmer's playing a political game here, and it's, he's happy that this stays as the headline, because what it does is it takes the Mandelson files out of the headline. It takes his lack of spending on defence out of the headline. It takes
that's on my list, and we haven't got to it.
Exactly, but all of this, when it comes to the run-up to the by-election, and he's trying to come across as this fatherly figure leading the country, he's deliberately dividing the country to deflect from the woes that are coming upon him.
Exactly. I mean, again, the most divisive person that you can possibly imagine is again, you know what really annoys me about people who speak slowly and calmly, and then they think that makes them the good person. No, maybe sometimes the people who are angry about something that you should be angry about are the good people. Maybe. 10:49 is the time. Up next, didn't get to defence yet, but we are going to be talking about defence up next with Dr. Alan Mendoza. Starmer may be about to water down the unaffordable £18 billion defence boost. It's unaffordable to not spend, frankly, 3 times that yesterday rather than by the mid-2030s. We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:52 is the time. Let's talk right now about defence. Dr. Alan Mendoza joins us. He's Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society. He's also Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Very good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Julia.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, again, a story that could often, I think, be front-page story in many papers today if we didn't have all these other stories to talk about, is that Keir Starmer may be about to water down the plans to boost our defences. We've got long-awaited, plan in terms of strategic, defence review, how we're actually going to spend some money on actually, beefing up our defences to a vaguely acceptable level. And basically that £18 billion defence boost is regarded as unaffordable. They can't borrow anymore, they don't want to tax anymore, they don't want to cut anything else. Where are they going to get the money from?
Well, this is the question, isn't it? I mean, what price defence? What price national security?
Yeah.
It seems to me that given everyone in this country knows exactly the nature of the threats now gathering around us, and the fact that those threats are likely to get worse, not better, in the coming 5 to 10 years, it's extraordinary the government suggesting it might want to water down investment in that national defence programme. I mean, either it's committed to defending these islands or it isn't. What is it? Yeah.
I mean, I think certainly what happened in the Iran conflict exposed horribly our lack of defences. The fact that we only managed to get a HMS Dragon out to Cyprus after 2 weeks, and even then, I think after a week or two, it had to go back in for maintenance. We simply do not have enough of, let's face it, anything, including fighting forces, to actually defend our country. Pretty much every former defence chief, every former head of the security services, every former defence secretary has said this. Everyone knows the money needs to be spent, 10 years ago, yesterday, not in the next 10 years. Even what they're planning to do doesn't touch the size of the need, does it?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So it's ironic, isn't it, that a war we haven't participated in is one that has exposed our defensive frailties all to see. And I think it is, kind of relevant to note that, imagine if we'd have been dragged into something, how much worse that would have been in terms of our own ability to participate. So, yes, of course, we know this is a culmination of a 30-year period of running down our defences on the grounds that it was safe to do so. Well, it wasn't safe to do so. It wasn't safe already a number of years ago. It's certainly not safe now. The government simply needs to find the money, or else it cannot be taken seriously, either on the domestic scene or indeed on the world stage, and our enemies will know it.
And the thing is, there are no sort of obvious votes in spending more money on defence. They'll think, although actually big boost for a lot of quite high-skilled jobs and, in our defence industries, but we're very bad at spending our money, even with the same amount of money we do spend pretty much as the French. The French have a lot more bang for their buck than we have for ours. But the reality is, they think it's not popular with the public, but not being able to defend our basically our own country, our allies, and our international interests will be very, very unpopular with the public when they find out.
Well, of course, and I think it already is. I think most British people understand there is a problem out there. They want action on it. They want a response from the government. I don't see anyone, by the way, saying, "Oh, we shouldn't spend more money on defence." No one's saying that. The real question is, how do you find the money?
Probably the Greens are. Well, exactly. But again, you're going to have. So, are people willing to pay more taxes, or is anyone willing to actually, cut things like the welfare bill? I mean, it's an absurd thing. We are spending more, twice as much, I think, on servicing, just paying the interest on our national debt every year, than we are on defence, which is absolutely insane.
Well, here are your big problems. You've alluded to a number of them. So the welfare budget, out of control. Secondly, no growth. As a result of no growth, you don't get the ability to actually spend more in general because there's nothing to spend. And of course, latterly, it's about how you're spending the money already in terms of debt interest and things like that. What we need is a period of urgent fiscal sanity in this country, where we get back to basics to understand. You can't borrow beyond your means. If you do, you've got to pay for it. And the cost of that ultimately are your services, but in this case, it is your very defence. And there may not be many votes in defence as a principle. There's a heck of a lot of votes to be lost in defence if people think you are incapable of defending the country.
Absolutely. Well, what do you make of this vote in the House of Representatives and Congress yesterday, passing a measure that seeks to halt Donald Trump's ability to take further military action in Iran? 4 Republicans joined Democrats in a public show of disapproval of the war, which, of course, was launched in February. Donald Trump said, basically, we're in a ceasefire, we're not at war, but there's this sort of separation of the roles of the executive and Congress in terms of the power. The president can declare war, but the Congress funds wars. What do you make of that vote? Does that change anything on the ground in Iran?
No, it doesn't change anything because, of course, you would have to have a Senate vote on top. The Republicans have a much bigger majority in the Senate. It seems unlikely.
For now,
For now, of course, that the Senate would vote in that way. And we've seen actually a period of time where the Senate hasn't even tabled a vote yet. So, I mean, there are bureaucratic ways to stop this from going on. But yes, it's a sign, isn't it, that people are disconcerted by, the sort of stage of affairs of where we are in Iran, this sort of hiatus. I mean, I think, people want a conclusion. Either we're going to go back to conflict and, force Iran to comply that way, or a deal is struck. But I think it's, a sign that people are getting restive and there needs to be some movement soon.
Well, there seems to have been, this US-backed ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. There's talk about the fact that the Iran conflict will have to include Hezbollah as well, Lebanon. But Hezbollah will not party to that ceasefire, those ceasefire talks at all, but has openly rejected. What a surprise. Terrorist group acts like a terrorist group, that ceasefire. So no doubt those Israeli incursions in Lebanon will continue. Your thoughts on that?
Well, that depends actually on what the Lebanese government and army are able to do with the help of the US. I mean, I think we always knew that Hezbollah were going to reject this deal. Yeah. It basically says you're going to be removed as a force from Lebanon, which, of course, is necessary for Lebanon. For goodness sakes, we've got this extra state actor that is controlling large swathes of the country and dragging it into wars. I mean, that's not a, kind of a practical situation that can continue at all in Lebanon. We should be supporting the Lebanese government as much as possible to create the conditions where Hezbollah is driven out, the Lebanese government reasserts control, and then you will have not simply a ceasefire, I think, with Israel, but actually peace.
Well, indeed. Well, that would be nice. Imagine that. Dr. Alan Mendoza, Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, thank you so much indeed for that. I know Philip Ingram, who's sitting next to me, is desperate to come in on that. I promise you, in the next half hour, I will let you come in on all of that. And indeed, actually, the revelation that we've actually got attempts by the Russians and Chinese and others basically to get to recruit people on LinkedIn. I'm waiting for my recruitment as a spy. I'd be great at that. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about, but in particular two-tier policing and controlled by DEI anti-racism training. That's up. This is Next Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker watching on YouTube or your connection device, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed the first hour, well, frankly, what a fool you are. Rip-roaring guest, rip-roaring conversation, fantastic call. Going to get to plenty more of your calls. Got a full board of calls. I'm really going to do my best to get to as many of them as I can today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about. You know the main subject of debate, of course. But if you do miss anything, go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss the thing. Of course, we put clips out on X as well. X also in the news today. But in particular, I want to hear from you in relation to the Henry Novak case, because we've got the Chief Constable of Hampshire Police, the force that arrested Henry Novak as he lay dying from his stab wounds. He's apologised for the student's handcuffing as he lay dying. However, he was absolutely adamant there is no two-tier policing. Indeed, the Prime Minister said exactly the same in response to a question from Nigel Farage at PMQs yesterday, while, of course, Nigel Farage was busy being condemned by the Prime Minister for him not condemning the violence in Southampton the other night, and in his warning that this could be the beginning of wider unrest. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are piling pressure on the police watchdog to launch a full investigation into the officers who arrested the murdered teenager. Here's my thing, though. It's the IOPC is the body that does that. Given that the IOPC is actually a body that also has exactly the same kind of DEI training, anti-racism training, exactly the same diversity woke culture as every police force in this country, as authorised by the Police College of Police and the National Council of Police Chiefs. Have you got any hope at all that we are going to get this anti-racism, which is what it is, out of our public sector, out particularly from our police? Because we're told there's no two-tier policing. We're told there's no anti-white racism. There's no bias. That is not the case. Chief Constable very clear about that. And yet officers in his own force, in response to a questionnaire by the force, in response to their own training, indoctrination, as one police officer has called it this morning to us, they felt they were being controlled by their DEI training. Isn't that a bit of a giveaway? They felt they couldn't speak out and they would be judged and have problems with their career if they didn't basically say the right thing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate message. Also in this hour, we are going to be talking about a government-backed road safety body calling for a blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed limits on all roads in all urban areas. I just don't even think I've got the energy for that one. And we're also going to be talking about the call, which apparently the NHS is going to heed for basically an end to all political badges and insignia and pro-Palestinian messages on NHS staff uniforms when they are at work. Pretty basic stuff. Need to tackle the anti-Semitism across our country, but particularly in our public sector bodies. All that coming up. Joining me, I'm delighted to say, it's Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning once again to you. Yeah. Goodness me, so much to talk about. I mean, it's hard to sort of narrow it all down, isn't it? Small point, by the way, to make. In about an hour's time, we're going to have Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, live in the studio. If you've got a question for her, do send us a message. Tell us what you would like me to ask her. I mean, she's been, I think genuinely, I think she's played a blinder on this Henry Novak case. I think she said a lot of the right things. But when you get praise from Keir Starmer for not being divisive, but he's criticising Nigel Farage for saying things which, frankly, I think most people know simply to be true, I wonder if we do get a little bit of the uni-party territory, even though I've actually agreed with every single word that Kemi Badenoch has said on this, but also every single word that Nigel Farage has said. Does everyone not actually really think the same on this? They're just pretending they don't?
I think they do, but I think Keir Starmer giving Kemi Badenoch praise was because he couldn't think of a way of putting her down.
Normally, that woman.
She had played a hand of cards that he couldn't deal with in any way. So he just praised her.
See, I don't think everyone's being accused of politicising this. I think the one person who's really politicising it is Keir Starmer.
He's the only one that's politicising it.
I think that Nigel Farage's reaction was visceral, in the same way that ours was, as in he felt it in his bones, in the same that we have. He was horrified by that video, and he knew what the problem was and he identified the problem and he spoke out and he said it. I think that Kemi Badenoch's reaction was visual. I think everyone, but the thing is, people have different reactions. What I don't accept is someone, whether it's a politician or a chief constable or anyone else, telling me or any other politician or anyone else what their reaction should be. Other than that, it should be within the law. Don't go rioting. Don't throw bins at the police. You want to go down and chant, "I can't breathe," take the knee to police after their actions with Henry Novak. You've got every right to do so. So I applaud you for taking your time out of your day and to do that. But you know, other than people acting outside of the law, you don't have a right to tell people what their reaction should be. What is the appropriate emotion watching an 18-year-old boy die slowly while he's treated with callous, disgusting behaviour from a woke police officer who's believing his murderer over him? Do tell me, pray, Prime Minister, what is the acceptable feeling I'm allowed to have? What is the acceptable language? Do let me know, because you, of course, getting everything right all the time. This is a man who doesn't even know his own mind. He does a speech about an island of strangers, and then apparently he didn't mean it when he said it. This is a man who's so used to not saying what he really thinks that he wouldn't know, he wouldn't understand people saying, this is what I feel, this is what I think, and this is what I want to happen. We're going to talk about the DI aspect in a moment, but load of the focus now has been on Nigel Farage saying the wrong thing or not saying something he should have said, rather than what happened to Henry Novak.
Well, you're very much so. And interestingly, if you look at the opposition benches, Kemi Badenoch is the leader of the opposition. She provides this mature, thought-through, experienced commentary and all the rest to hold Keir Starmer to account. Nigel Farage is the leader of a protest party with half a dozen.
What are you talking about?
No, with half a dozen MPs, and he goes out deliberately to stir the pot a little bit more from his perspective.
Is that what you think?
He chooses his language very carefully.
He knows what he's doing. He's a very, very clever man.
And therefore he's balancing what he's doing against what Kemi's doing, against what he knows will stir Keir Starmer up, because he wanted Starmer's reaction.
You see, I think that's too cynical. I think he does know what he's doing and he knew what the reaction would be. But I think he is genuinely speaking for the vast majority of ordinary people.
He is.
Why shouldn't a politician speak what he... I thought we were all supposed to speak our truth these days, no? Yeah. Why should he not speak about his raw emotion and about what the country is feeling? And again, the idea that, look, with all my sympathies and my heart goes out to Henry Novak's family and his father and his, everyone talks about very dignified speech. What did you expect him to do when he came out of the court, what they've gone through? But with all due respect, he doesn't get to tell me or anyone else what they're allowed to say or do about this, because this is not just about, sadly, his own son's death. This is about a wider problem in society, in our public institutions, in our private institutions as well, where woke thinking is allowed to overtake doing your job properly. And the idea you've got a Prime Minister and a police chief and everyone else telling us there is no two-tier policing, saying there is two-tier policing is basically stirring up racial hatred and division, when we can see it before our own eyes. We've seen it over the grooming gangs, we've seen it over pro-Palestinian marches and United Kingdom marches, we've seen it over the Maccabi Tel Aviv match, we've seen it over Southport, it's there for everyone to see. You cannot deny. We see it blatantly in terms of the reaction to what happened in Southport, which was unacceptable, the violence there, and the reaction to Black Lives Matter riots over George Floyd. When the same people who were condemning Nigel Farage, who had nothing to do with those riots, who's condemning the rioters and Nigel Farage, were people who were saying it was absolutely understandable why people were angry and furious about what happened to George Floyd. You've got like two-tier thinking on their part. But here's the thing. We've got a political class, the House of Commons, civil service, police, from top to bottom, the NHS, every civil servant, most big companies. This company, the one I work for right now, had this for years as well. This woke DEI training, and people always think it's diversity, equality, inclusion. It's not. Diversity, equity, inclusion. Equity, very different from equality. Equity is the exact opposite of equality. We've got all these people saying we don't have two-tier policing, don't have a two-tier Britain, except that the wording in this DEI, policy document, their action plan for Hampshire Police and from the National Council of Police Chiefs, backed by the College of Police, who do all the training for police officers, is very explicit. Basically, being anti-racist, following these policies, does not require being colourblind. On the contrary, it is the opposite. It does not mean treating people equally. It means treating people differently. Once you are treating people differently because of the colour of their skin, you are a racist. That's what you are. And yet, anti-racism is what it's called if it's anti-white. And it is basically completely and utterly now a poison that is in the veins of our body politic. How do we root that out?
Well, this starts at the very top. It starts with your government policy. It starts with what Keir Starmer should be dealing with, which is why he's trying to close the debate down by attacking Nigel Farage for saying what the people of the country want. Nobody wants, and Nigel Farage, I'm certain, does not want violence at protests. He should have come out and said that.
I think that was a very major error not to.
But nobody wants that. But the only
he's
person
been barracked either way.
Yeah, the only person that doesn't want peaceful protest to point out the things is Keir Starmer. And peaceful protest, unfortunately, is the only way that we're going to be able to start to change government policy. Because he doesn't listen to anything else.
Well, what do you think with Keir Starmer? No, only to attacking, and again, making the whole thing about Nigel Farage, and he was the one who was politicising it in PMQs yesterday. I thought Keir Starmer was appalling yesterday.
Yeah, I did too.
Appalling. I thought Kemi Bednar was very good. I had an issue with what Nigel Farage didn't say rather than what he said. But Keir Starmer's today, his latest Farage, he's accused tech billionaire Elon Musk of trying to whip up division, in his words, in the UK following the murder of Henry Novak. He's been speaking on a visit to Yorkshire. He said, "We need to assert who we are as a country because Musk has been interfering in our politics in the last few days, trying to whip up division. That is not who we are in Britain. We are reasonable, tolerant people. When we have a terrible case like Henry Novak, we react calmly as his family has done." Well, you might want to. You might want to react calmly. Again, but these are the same people who tell us when a man takes his rucksack into the Manchester Arena and blows up little girls at a pop concert, we're told to sing Kumbaya, light a candle, and then sing Don't Look Back in Anger. No, thank you. I'm still angry about that, and that was almost a decade ago.
Yeah, but hang on, Keir Starmer. Elon Musk from the United States telling Keir Starmer here. Keir Starmer getting outraged at Keir Starmer. Whenever it came to George Floyd, was trying to say what the reaction should be in the United States, backed by his London mayor Sadiq Khan, who was saying
he wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister saying, "What are we doing?"
Saying there should be protest, and everything that came out, and Starmer on his knee.
He's got a very strong view about what Israel does, doesn't he?
I'm sorry, this is another example of two-tier approach to everything, and he's just set himself up for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000. I know, but we should be angry. Yeah. But it was interesting, Jack Straw, who was Home Secretary under the Labour Party in 1999 when the Macpherson report came out, it was into the Stephen Lawrence murder in 1993, where basically said the police were institutionally racist. He said those anti-racism guidelines have gone too far. Yeah. Here's all the fact, shows how old I am. The inquest into the death of Stephen Lawrence, when it was extraordinary when the jury came out after about half an hour and basically came back and then named his killers. I was there. I was a journalist for the Evening Standard covering that inquest, and it was the most cub reporter, most extraordinary thing. That story, as someone working on a London paper at the time, having trained in the East London, that was so much a part of my training and my thinking, on this as well. There's no doubt at all. This is still the biggest story in town. And again, I'd like to point out, it was us and our rival GB News and X, who's been criticised for this, that were talking about all of this for 24 hours. Well, since the sentencing, but I wasn't on air after the sentencing, but certainly after we saw that body cam footage, that was not considered to be a story by the BBC, Sky, or ITV, and it happened too late for most of the newspapers. But that was not considered to be a story by them until basically people insisted it was. None of their morning broadcasts, not even the whole morning, did they consider that to be a story, which is very, very telling, because if that had been an Asian or a black man who'd been treated like that, they would have gone wall to wall on it. Again, two-tier media as well. Let's talk about the NH staff who are going to be banned from wearing not just pro-Palestinian badges, but any kind of political insignia, pro-Israel, pro-Palestinian, pro anything else, any of their political insignia. This is a recommendation from Lord Mann in a report. He's the anti-Semitism advisor to the government. He's been a great voice in all this, talking about how intimidated staff are and patients are by the absolutely disgusting explosion of anti-Semitism within the NHS and other public bodies. But he says there's no place for any political insignia. I mean, I couldn't agree more. I'm still, I mean, I'd like the rainbow. I'd like the rainbow lanyards gone as well. Oh, I'm an ally. Well, I didn't walk up to you and thought there's a homophobe. I mean, can we just assume? Can we just assume that you're a good person and that you're not? I don't go up to people and go, oh, you've not got a band saying you care about cancer on your wrist. Do you not care about people dying of cancer? I mean, this is weird. This is sixth form politics. It's a debating society, isn't it? If you're in a public-facing job, if you're in any job in the public sector, if I have to pay your wages or I have to use your services with that because I haven't got a choice about it, and you work for the DVLA or anything, you don't have any political insignia on. Full stop, nothing. Whether I agree with it or not, I don't want to know how you vote. I don't want to know your views on Israel. I don't want to know your views on anything. Eurovision, I don't want to know your views. I want you to just do your job and treat me, and that's it.
Yeah, the badge collectors in the NHS seem to be more than McDonald's badge star collectors.
They're ex accounts. Blue Heart.
My father-in-law is quite seriously ill in hospital in Birmingham at the moment, and I'm there a lot. And the numbers of badges and everything else that are pinned to people's uniforms and round their
it's unhygienic
for
a start.
It is unhygienic. It should not be allowed. And that you're expressing every different view for everything across the board. I'm not interested. I find it quite intimidating at times.
And you're not a man who's easily intimidated. But the interesting thing is, of course, they'll say, it's my freedom of speech. Oh, so you're happy if someone had a reform badge? You'd have been happy for someone during 2016 to have a pro-Brexit badge, would you?
Or a pro-Israeli badge.
Yeah, well, I have to say, there were so many pro-Palestinian badges on my journeys to and from my work, because I go through Westminster. I just took to carrying an Israeli flag, which I would just get out and put around my neck and sit there and look at them. I just sit opposite them with my Israeli flag. You know me, I don't care. I'm going to get myself in trouble one day, but you know what? I just think, how dare you?
So if you want to do proper badges, flags and protests, you want to come from Northern Ireland. We are experts at it. We do it very properly.
Yeah, and how's that working out for you?
Well, it doesn't work out very well, and we know the consequences of it, and therefore it's right and proper and
Let's talk about the defence issues, which you were just... We were talking about it earlier, and you were just sitting there going, come to me. This is your area of expertise. We're told, look, it's bad enough that we're looking at so little money being spent on defence by this government as it is, but the government apparently looking at watering down the £18 billion boost to defences that, by the way, wouldn't actually happen until mid-30s anyway, a 10-year defence spending plan. Still haven't got any of this properly announced, but watering down the 18 billion extra. 18 billion doesn't even touch the size of what we need anyway, does it?
It doesn't. The current estimate for the deficit in defence is 28 billion. And that's today.
That's on a good day.
That's today. The Strategic Defence Review that Keir Starmer came out and said, we're going to do everything and we're going to implement everything, came out just over a year and 2 days ago. And therefore, nothing's been implemented.
What's the point of having a review if you're not going to act on it?
There's no point. And actually... If you examine why they're saying they can't get the money, it's because of the self-imposed fiscal rules that the Chancellor's brought in. They're self-imposed. That's a political decision. She can change them.
It is, OK, except you can borrow more and then your borrowing costs will go up even more. You can tax more, you get even more unpopular. And again, a lot of people who say, we should spend more on defence. OK, well, we're going to have to tax you more. They won't like it. Or you can cut more, like the welfare bill. They are not capable of doing that because they've got a bunch of lunatic backbenchers who won't do it.
And you can invest more. If you took what the Germans did, the Germans changed their constitution and borrowed.
I'm loving their chancellor at the moment.
Borrowed more, but invested it in German businesses. So they're building the businesses. They're creating jobs. They're going to get the tax revenue in that by mid 2030s. They'll get the tax revenue in that will pay for all of it.
The thing about all of this is all long-term thinking. It's not just that governments in Britain think only in a 4 or 5 year term. They think in a 24-hour news cycle.
Correct.
It is even worse than that. There is no long-term thinking. I would like all of the political parties to agree. We're just going to take that whole defence thing off the agenda. We're going to have to do what we're going to have to do. But again, if people say, well, it shouldn't be political, at the end of the day, though, how you pay for things is political. Do you put taxes up? Do you borrow more? Do you cut spending, or a combination of those three? But the reality is, the answer answers to those questions are different for each party. So it's by definition political, because everything is political.
Yeah. And there needs to be some clear political decisions. There needs to be a law that turns around and says that all of this money needs to be spent on UK-based companies, full stop, so that we benefit from the taxes. We're not buying it from overseas.
Yeah. And also, we need to get someone in from the private sector to do the procurement, and not the idiots we've got the Ministry of Defence who
needs
get.
to change.
And also, you know what? Once you've ordered it, you don't make a single change, because you basically end up paying double the amount.
But they've just appointed a new national armaments director who has come in from industry and all the rest of it. But now the reports today in the press are saying that the Treasury is thinking of taking the future combat air system, the new aircraft that's being developed jointly with the Italians and with the Japanese.
Why don't we take something that's already developed?
Taking that from because the technology isn't there at the minute, they have to develop that, but taking that from the MOD, from the new National Armaments Director, who's been brought in from industry, and putting it into the Treasury. The Treasury's going to control it from a money perspective. It's never going to happen.
And what do you make, just very briefly, about this vote in the House of Representatives in Congress, a narrow vote, just for Republicans during the Democrats? Basically, they want to rein in Trump's powers to continue the war in Iran. And, of course, we've got what we're told is a deal between Israel and Lebanon to implement the ceasefire. There's been tentatively a ceasefire, but not really. Hezbollah has carried on stepping up attacks. Unbeknownst to the BBC, who think that Israel just completely randomly decides to, take forces into southern Lebanon and fire on Lebanese sites. Apparently they're doing it just because, they're Israelis and they're awful and horrible and always the baddies. I mean, if you check with any of their Middle East correspondents, that seems to be the message. And then at some point someone might mention that actually Hezbollah has continued strikes. If any country was sending missiles into our country, we would act in exactly the same way. In fact, we'd be doing much worse. But what do you make? Hezbollah aren't party to these talks. They've said there won't be a ceasefire. The Lebanese army is about, a third or half the size of the Hezbollah forces. I mean, is there a ceasefire if Hezbollah ain't part of it?
No, there isn't. The vote in the US Congress is performative because of the midterms that are coming up.
Yeah.
Israel's going in. There is a United Nations Security Council resolution, UNSCR 1701, that turned around and said Hezbollah had to be disbanded.
Yep.
And
you'd have this buffer zone in southern Lebanon.
Buffer zone that the United Nations has put troops in, and they are there to police and make sure it's been disbanded.
Yep.
It hasn't.
Yep.
And therefore I think Israel is perfectly within its rights to turn around and say, we've got a United Nations Security Council resolution that says this group that keeps attacking us should not be here. It's been there for over 20 years.
What would we do?
We're going to go and
remove them.
remove
What would any other country be expected to do in that scenario?
We're going to go and remove them.
No, we'll just put up with it.
We'll
just put up with it every day.
They've got the international legal basis to do it.
Yep.
I just wish the Israelis would come out and say, we're implementing UNSCR 1701.
Do you know what? As an alternative, I'd love to go and do PR for them, because they do a bloody awful job. They really do. No, I've not got 7,000 shekels for that. I'm still waiting for all those. None of those checks have ever arrived. I don't know whose bank account they're going into. No, I just speak my mind. No one's paying me to say it. Not my boss. Not Netanyahu. I just say what I actually think based on the facts. I know it's a really original way of thinking. Let's also talk about these Chinese spies apparently posing as recruitment agents to trick UK government and military staff into disclosing state secrets. This is a warning from MI5. But not just that. It's a bulletin by the Five Eyes Alliance. Now, this is the UK, US, Australia, Canada and New Zealand. These agencies work so closely together, warning undercover operatives are using sites like LinkedIn, Indeed and Upwork to advertise fake analyst jobs, and then they get people and they get them to reveal information that's not genuinely in the public domain that can be used by Chinese military intelligence service. I mean, it's all very clever. I hope we're doing the same and being clever like that. But I think we've got a sentencing today of two people who've been accused and convicted of spying. The worry is, this is happening all the time, and an awful lot of people are falling for it.
What is, I helped expose this a few years ago with Fiona Hamilton from The Times, who wrote a story about me trying to be recruited by the Chinese, which happened through LinkedIn.
How far did they get?
I was playing with them. It was great.
If you could see the twinkle in his eye
I got from them some of their intelligence priorities.
What
and all
were
the
they
rest
asking you for?
I have to not go into lots of detail, but I've had a tap on the shoulder to say I can never go to China ever again by
I've been told that. I've never been to China and I'm gutted.
I've upset them because I exposed a lot of what they were after. But it's happening all the time. I exposed this over 5 years ago.
Yep.
It's going on. It's timely that people are reminded of it again because it is happening continuously.
Yeah, absolutely. So much to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts, but in particular I want to hear your thoughts on the Honey Dovak case. Prime Minister and the police chief at Hampshire denied there's two-tier policing, and yet we've we've actually got a report in the Times today of a survey carried out by Hampshire Police of their own staff who'd had this awful DEI woke anti-racism training that is racist, saying they felt controlled by their training. How do we root it out? How bad is it? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Don't forget, Kemi Badenoch is going to be on the show in about half an hour's time, the leader of the opposition. We're going to talk about Henry Novak's case, two-tier policing, you name it. We'll get in touch with you on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number for you to get in touch with us. George is on the line, very kindly waited to speak to us after last hour. George is in Dundee. George, thank you so much for waiting. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia.
Hello.
The Henry Novak case. What struck me very quickly about it was how quickly the race card was played. Not just by the murderer, but the whole family played the race cards. Yeah. Now, there's a number of cards that people play in this country. Islamophobia,
transphobia,
misogyny, transphobia, Hugh Edwards and the mental health cards. Yeah. There should be two cards you play in this country. The good guy card and the wronging card. Yeah. Henry Novak was a good guy. That family were wrongins. Yep. And I do not need DIE training to recognise that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine, Julia, the second point is, imagine if there was no knives involved in the attack on Henry Novak. If there was no knives involved and he was just attacked by that guy, I have no doubt Henry Novak would have been arrested, detained and charged on the basis of 4 liars, what they said to the police.
The brother pretended he was there already and said he, on the phone in the 999 call, that he had, that there'd been that abuse and that he'd seen it. Yeah, there'd been two men versus one. He'd have been convicted.
Yeah, and he would have been convicted. He would have had that prosecution over him for the rest of his life. The second and final point, and I'm so angry about this, Nigel Farage is speaking for the country, the whole country. Those braying, hissing, booing, head-shaking MPs are hiding behind the body of a dead man and a dead man's family. Shame on them.
Couldn't agree with you more. Fantastic call, George. Thank you so much. Speaking for the nation, I think there. Just so you know, breaking news, a coroner is going to examine whether police contributed to Henry Novak's death after he was handcuffed while dying. We were told by a pathologist during that court case in which his killer, Vikram Digwa, was actually found guilty by a jury unanimously, that actually his wounds were unsurvivable and he would have died. But, of course, the reality is there was time, which perhaps could have, saved his life after he had been stabbed, and that call arrived. That call was made, and the police arrived, and then a doctor arrived on the scene. But crucially, the handcuffing of him, the moving of him, the dragging him, the handcuffing, and whether or not actually, if he'd had help sooner, whether that might have saved his life, because some people who've looked at the pathologist's report publicly have said they believe that there may be an issue there, because if the police have not just behaved callously and badly, but actually dangerously and contributed to him dying, that is quite another thing. Bearing in mind those police officers are currently not suspended. They're just not on frontline duties. That's an interesting update there. Let's go to Jason, who's in Wiltshire and wants to have his say. Hello, Jason.
Morning, Julia.
Morning. What do you want to say?
What a breath of fresh air it was to see someone stand up in the lion's den yesterday and address the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Obviously, with this two-tier police in this woke sort of society we've got going on, this needs to be addressed. It can't do what old Judith Chalmers wants to do, hide behind the family, because it needs to be addressed. This could hopefully be a starting point, because in the future this could then be somebody else's son.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Because this idea that, well, this Mark Novak, the father, has told, he doesn't want this to create division. He didn't tell people not to talk about this. And anyway, I'm sorry, with all due respect to him, he doesn't get to decide what the rest of us or our politicians say or what we think. But the point is, as much as my heart goes out to that family, this isn't just about that one death. It's about preventing this happening to someone else, and that is a political debate and a public debate that we're allowed to have.
Well, I think we will, and this will continue to happen. The division's already been done, I think, with the two-tier police and the two-tier justice system, the woke agenda that seems to be going on this country.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. Are you releasing Plank of the Week again at all?
No idea.
Oh, I was
no idea.
Not above Kevin yesterday. Would have won it hands down.
Jason, it's above my. Kevin's on holiday at the moment. It's above my pay grade, mate. I don't know. Jason, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's get a couple of the messages as well on this. Faye says they're lying. The people, PM and the police chief denying there's two-tier policing. They're lying and covering up for their ideology. Ian says, as George Orwell wrote in 1984, the party told you to reject the evidence for your eyes and ears. It was their final and most essential command. Oh, ain't that the truth? Bob says, we'll see the public's reaction at the next general election. And Ben says, Starmer should resign. His policies directly caused this. Aisha said that there is two-tier policing and two-tier justice in this country because of Starmer, the Labour Party. They've ripped this country apart. And Norman says, two-tier is across the country. Stop playing us as fools. And Dan says, clearly we now live in a society where two-tier policing is as blatant as ever. Just look at the consistent evidence that is now everywhere. Couldn't agree with you all more there. 11:35 is the time. Up next, going to talk to former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville once again. Also going to be talking about 20-mile-per-hour zones across every urban street. That's the proposal that's being looked at by the government. And Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader, will be live in the studio very soon. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show, 11:37. This time, just a reminder that just after midday, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, will be live here in the studio. Philip Ingram is still with me, and we're joined, I'm delighted to say, by former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville in the studio again. Good morning to you. We've spoken to you already this week about this awful case, and again, I think, our audience definitely would sort of, agreeing and applauding every single word that you said. Latest developments we have, and it's interesting, just in the last few moments, that the coroner is going to examine what role these police officers who attended Henry Novak on the scene back in December last year and handcuffed him while he was lying bleeding to death, as you were saying, I can't breathe, I've been stabbed repeatedly to them, whether that actually played a role in his death. Because it's very clear in the court case in which, of course, his killer, Vikram Digwa, was found guilty, that the pathologist said that these injuries were unsurvivable. And sadly, he would have died no matter what. And although people are likening this case to the George Floyd case, that was a case of a police officer killing someone he was arresting, as opposed to police officers not helping and not showing kindness and believing a young man who was lying dying. If it is the case that there is any evidence at all that those police officers made it more likely that Henry Novak died, we are into a whole different territory, aren't we?
Yeah, it's absolutely dreadful, because you're talking about things like manslaughter charges there. I mean, the key issue here is the family. They want answers, don't they? They'll be angry and upset and in a terrible way, and all they need is these answers. But my main concern is that, yes, these officers, if they've done something wrong, they need to be absolutely dealt with, and the treatment of a dying man was absolutely scandalous. But it's the wider issues, I think, Julian. We've got a society which is deeply divided. We have a police force which has lost all trust and confidence, it would seem. I was saying to somebody, can you imagine 20 years ago, ordinary folk in Southampton shouting shame on you at the whole police.
But I find it fascinating that people always talk about we've got a nation that's divided and this is a bad thing. Why is division a bad thing? I've always said a nation that is wholly agreed on everything being awful, or wholly agreed on everything being good. I mean, that would be nice if but whenever we have the House of Commons completely agreeing on things and everyone nodding and saying, well, I really appreciate, always. Without exception, it creates bad law, it creates inaction or very poor action. From Dangerous Dogs Act onwards, I really, really think that...
Diversity of thought,
diversity of thought matters.
Important.
But I'm just saying, when people say division... No, if the division is created, and this is the same thing, the same reason why people were shut up over the grooming gangs, over Axel Cabana and Southport murders and everything, is the idea that people saying out loud what they're thinking, having a normal human reaction to horrors and wanting action, that is the problem, as opposed to the actual horrible crimes they're feeling and talking about. If Keir Starmer and this chief of police in Hampshire, if they want to think that this is all fine and that there's not a problem with two-tier policing, that's fine. But it's not divisive for other people to say, we think there is a problem because we can see it with our own eyes.
Well, what's been happening over the last 3 or 4 decades, the accusation of racism has been used to shut people down. Yeah. And so people haven't been able to properly discuss immigration, they haven't been able to properly discuss crime levels amongst some groups, they haven't been able to discuss things like you said, like the grooming gang. And at least now, though, what the good thing for me now, that if anything's come out of this wicked murder and this death of this, the tragic death of this young man, is that something's got to be done. And you could see what gets me with is the disconnect. If you look at the establishment, which is embodied by the MPs in Parliament yesterday, they have completely lost it. The gulf between what they believe and what the viewers and listeners to this station will believe is just beyond incredible.
Yeah.
And
we're obviously just making it up in our heads.
Yeah, that's right. And the idea that we might notice that something really bad happened and we're being shut down. Keep quiet, you'll cause division. There'll be a report in 3 months. And, of course, Zippy Starmer, as he is, he tells us, there'll be lessons learned. Well, there won't be lessons learned.
Can I just say you made his voice more interesting than it is?
And it will be a terrible. People are told that, and they've basically been told, shut up.
Well,
because
exactly.
We know
well,
best.
We've got Keir Starmer, he's accusing Nigel Farage of stirring up division. He's now accusing Elon Musk on X of stirring up division. But it's fascinating. He and the likes of Sadiq Khan and Shabana Mahmood and others, they did not have that reaction when people were being angry about the death of George Floyd in 2020. On the contrary, they were virtually praising those people going out on the streets, causing, oh, by the way, largely peaceful demonstrations, which, of course, as we know, were violent riots, causing mass destruction.
The people causing division are the left. They have purposely tried to get people into different identity groups in order to pick them off, so they're all squabbling amongst each other, and then they can get votes from them.
And the crucial thing here, it is not a glitch in the system, it is the system. And this is the thing. So we've got this guy, Alexis Boone, straight out central casting for Chief Constable. He's apologised for what police officers did in relation to Henry Novak on that fateful evening. But he denied there was two-tier policing. We've certainly got, full investigation being called for by the Tories and others into those officers, into whether or not there was a role in terms of their training. But we've had officers from that force. We're told by Hampshire Police Chiefs it's not an issue, and yet a course is taught taught to those officers and staff about racism, unconscious bias, privilege, and the importance of being an ally. And a number of officers, a large percentage of officers, 1 in 7, said that they felt controlled and pressured to adopt certain ideas in the sessions to say the right thing. The same number felt that mistakes would have been held against them. A fifth said they feared being rejected for saying the wrong thing. We've had numerous officers saying, from top to bottom, retired and speaking anonymously, current officers saying that they literally, you can't say anything because racism accusation is the worst thing. But bearing in mind that survey was carried out of staff by the constabulary. But that's just the ones who were brave enough to say it.
Of course it is. And
it's a problem.
If you go to one of these sessions, it's like Soviet style. So it's a re-education session. And if you dare to have any diversity of thought and say, I disagree with it, you're denounced.
I don't think I am a racist just because I'm white.
I've got a great friend who works in the probation service, and he had exactly the same thing. Went to one of these sessions, you weren't joining in, you weren't saying anything. So just not joining in, you see, suspect. It is North Korean, it is Soviet, it is all these wicked things, and it's the way that they brainwash you. Now, I'm lucky, I've got strength of character and I'll resist all this sort of wickedness. My hero is St. Lawrence, of course, who was griddled rather than...
Can I point out, though, if you were about 20 years younger, no offence, sir, you would have had to toe the line, otherwise your career would not have led you to be a detective chief inspector. You would not have had that promotion if you didn't toe the line, and that's what they're being forced to do.
They do that. I mean, I was a DCI for half my service because I realised I had to give up because I wasn't going to say the right things. And I saw people who were the same rank as me, utterly ambitious, who would literally sell their grandmother for the next pip or crown, and they would say and believe...
But this is very, very dangerous.
It is very, very dangerous, and it's how they make you feel.
Here's the thing. We're going to have an investigation into whether or not this has been an issue, we're told you, by the IOPC, the body that investigates the police. The IOPC has exactly the same training on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, equity, not equality, equity, treating people differently because of the colour of their skin. That is literally what is required by that. It's in black and white in their documents. The Home Office oversees this, the Police College of Policing, the IOPC, the National Council of Police Chiefs, all of them, they all have exactly the same training, and now they're going to look into whether or not that training is a problem. By definition, if you say I don't have unconscious bias, if you say just because I'm white I'm not racist, or if you're brown or black skinned and said I'm not a victim just because I'm brown or black, you by definition are part of the problem because you don't recognise it. How on earth can we trust that anyone is going to get to the bottom of this when this is, as I say, I've said it, it's a poison through the veins of our entire body politic?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got the Conservative leader coming on, and they have got to take full responsibility because all these things went on under their watch. So they can't... It's all right, Chris Phillips standing up and saying how outrageous it was. He was the police minister when much of this training was being delivered. They allowed it to go on. They allowed this insidious left-wing cancer to just swarm around the whole body politic, and it's just a dreadful thing.
And again, it is in every government department.
It is.
Cammy Badenoch, to be fair, she got rid of a lot of stuff when she was Equalities Minister.
But it's not just, as you've said, it's not just policing. This is a real societal issue. But I think we're coming to a moment where most people are thinking, you know, I need to speak out. And we're lucky to have stations like Talk where we can discuss this, because for 2 or 3 decades there was nowhere to discuss it, and anybody discussed it was denounced.
It wouldn't be a story. It wouldn't be a story if it was only the mainstream media, and I say other stations we need to shout out to as well. Where does this go from here? Do you agree, just finally, that Nigel Farage, when he says that those riots we saw in Southampton, they were on a very small scale. I mean, people were injured. It's unacceptable. We all condemn it. Nigel Farage annoyingly did not condemn it. I mean, I find that inexcusable. He didn't. But he says that he thinks they're the beginning of wider unrest. Do you think that is true?
It's very sad. If we get a hot summer and people...
The weather is incredibly important in these things.
Weather, absolutely. PC rain sort of does away with things like that.
If it hadn't been raining this week, I think things would have been a lot worse.
We don't want riots. We don't want...
No.
But what we don't want is a establishment that foments it by telling people to keep quiet, trying to suppress people who are trying to bring out legitimate opinions, and that's what's gone on. So, as we said, the people stoking division are the people in the establishment. They have created this monster. And, you know, you've got newspapers like The Telegraph denouncing all this. So it's really catching on. And as I've said, most people just get on with their life, but they're now noticing it's all gone bad.
They get on with their lives and they want to know that if and when they call the police, when they need help, that the police won't treat them differently because of the colour of their skin. That's not too much to ask. When the Prime Minister says we are criticising Elon Musk and X, saying we're trying to whip up division, we are a reasonable, tolerant people. Yes, Prime Minister, we are, and we've had enough. 11:49 is the time. Mike Neville, always great to have you in the studio. Former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Up next, we are going to be talking about a proposal being considered by the government for us to just, well, give up on 20-mile-per-hour zones in cities. No, if you're in a built-up area, everywhere is going to be a 20-mile-per-hour zone if they get their way. Deep sighs, everybody. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Don't forget, coming up straight after midday, Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, will be live in the studio. Lots to talk to her about. First up, though, a completely different topic from this horrific case of Henry Novak's death. Let's talk about roads in built-up areas, which should have, according to a safety charity that advises that the government have a blanket 20-mile-per-hour speed limits across the entire city, town, village. If it's a built-up area, 20 mile per hour is the automatic rule, they say. The Parliamentary Advisory Council for Transport Safety, that's PACS, said lowering the default limits, as happened in Wales, and what a success that was, would be less expensive than leaving it to councils to implement different rules in different roads. And of course, we remember what happened in Wales, where we had 500,000 people facing fines for breaking a speed limit of 20 miles per hour. But the controversial policy was eventually scrapped because it was so unpopular. I imagine it would also be the case for many of us in England. Let's talk about this with motoring lawyer and road safety campaigner Nick Freeman. A very good morning to you, Nick.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, we know, don't we, we've seen all those road safety adverts that if you're driving at 30, your chances of killing a child when you hit a child on the road, much higher than if you're driving at 20. We realise that. We drive slower, and quite rightly, in small residential streets, around schools, at picking up and dropping off time. But, I mean, I've got 20 mile per hour zones on a 6-lane wide major red route near me in central London. And everyone's just sort of stopping and starting and stopping and starting. I think we spend more time looking at our speedometers, trying not to get a fine, than we do looking at the road. Do 20 mile per hour zones are they really necessary on most streets?
I think no one would argue that if you hit someone at 20, you're going to cause less injury and less damage to them than 30. That's not an argument. And if you hit them at 10 miles an hour, so it's a case of finding something that's sensible, proportionate, economically viable, and basically fixes everything that you need to fix. And the obvious answer, in my view, safety is obviously of paramount importance. Why not have a dynamic speed limit? So, for example, when people are going to school an hour before school's open, an hour afterwards, and then the same at the other end of the day, you impose it. In highly pedestrianised areas, you impose it. And I think if you adopt that sort of what I call smart approach, you will achieve the objectives, and at the same time allow people that there needs to be some sensibility. And you've talked about Wales. We won't talk about that, but road traffic law
best forgotten.
It needs to make sense, doesn't it?
Well, that's it. People understand. Now, look, I think if you're screeching down a road, at 30, 40 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, when there's a school nearby, frankly, you're absolutely irresponsible. I want the police.
Absolutely.
Were there any police to actually arrest anybody? Things I'd like you arrested. However, a lot of the time we are talking about major roads, whether it's at 4 in the morning when no one's on the roads, or or middle of the day. You say safety is the paramount concern. I don't think it's the only concern, though.
It isn't.
We allow people to drive at 70 on a motorway, and we could all, if we only ever drove at 50, then there'll be fewer accidents. We have to have a trade-off, don't we, between getting places and safety. And surely, I mean, a simpler way to make people safer on the roads, wouldn't it be, why don't we train our children not to use their phones while they're, and adults indeed, while they're on the roads? Why don't we train people into looking before they cross the road? That might cut down on pedestrian deaths.
In my view, it should be outlawed. Using a phone crossing a road at a pedestrian crossing should be outlawed. Should be outlawed if you're on a bike, an e-bike, etc., etc. Yes. Headphones should be outlawed. There's all sorts of things that we can do. The default position of 30 has been in law for many, many years.
And we actually have very safe roads compared to most other countries.
Very, very safe. And if we just used our brain instead of lazy policing, we would achieve the objectives, and we would basically keep the statistics that everyone's concerned about. And interestingly enough, the government's own Department of Transport policy is to retain the 30 mile an hour default speed limit. Yeah. So this is really a massive, massive U-turn.
But a lot of people see this as not a safety measure, but actually it's a way of raising money, isn't it? Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, he's made reducing speed limits from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour a key transport policy in London. More than half of the capital's roads do now have the lower limit. The reality is, on an awful lot of those roads, you'd be lucky to hit the 20 mile per hour speed limit most of the time, certainly when there are children around. And the rest of the time, frankly, you're driving on a completely empty road. Genuinely, if I'm like driving to the airport when I used to come to work at silly o'clock in the morning, just literally having to put your foot on the brake constantly because the cars are not designed to go constantly at 20 miles per hour now.
It's counterintuitive, and you have to remember cyclists don't have a speed limit. Indeed. So you have the tension, the friction at 20 miles an hour with cyclists undertaking, overtaking, which in itself causes safety problems. It doesn't cause causes massive stress for drivers, particularly if you're a taxi driver at 2, 3 in the morning. You're sitting on a dual carriageway at 20 miles an hour. Your living is being reduced massively because of electric vehicles and now the speed limit. Environmentally, it's neutral. So we just need to think about it sensibly, and instead of having a knee-jerk, lazy reaction that's ill thought out, let's reduce it to 5 miles an hour. Why not?
Well, if safety is the only concern, exactly.
The other point, Julia, which I think is an important point, is that most motorists are sensible, law-abiding citizens, and they're getting caught out, and they're being criminalised at the same time that shoplifting now really isn't an offence, burglaries the police won't investigate. So there's a feeling of disproportionality, almost two-tier policing. If you're a motorist, we're going to nail you. And if you're a criminal, we're actually not interested. 12-month prison sentence now automatically suspended unless there are exceptional circumstances.
I couldn't agree with you more. And again, if the only contact people mostly ever have with the police is over things like this, and you're doing 23 miles per hour in a 20-mile zone on a 6-lane road, you're thinking, really? Nick Freeman, thank you for that. Motoring lawyer and road safety campaigner, thank you for that. Philip Ingram is sitting in the studio with me, former senior military intelligence officer. I mean, look, it's not the biggest, most important story of the day. It is something that irks people. Motorists increasingly feel, motorists being the vast majority of people in this country, that they are just a tax cow for this, and all governments. Easy to tax. What can you do? Most people need their cars for getting around, for work. They don't, they're not. People go, well, why don't you get on a bike then? Because I can't cycle to work because it's miles away. I've got to get the kids to school and pick up the shopping on the way home, or I've got tools in my van. There's a load of nonsense. But this sort of stuff really, really upsets people.
Oh, it does. The next step is the going back to the man with the red lantern in front of the vehicle as you're driving down the street. That's what's going to happen. Of course, then you'll be accused of being sexist because it's only a man in front of it. But we need to get back to education. The roads have become more dangerous, but we've stopped educating our children the whole way through about how to operate safely around them. I remember the Green Cross Code when I was a child, and Tufty teaching you how to cross the road and everything else. It still imprinted my brain. We need to get back to those sorts of things instead of bringing in more woke approaches that you can't just stick to 20 miles an hour.
They're trying to raise money from us. It's not about safety. It really, really isn't. It's coming up to the top of the hour. Philip Ingham, thank you very much for joining us. We'll hear more from you in the next hour. Delighted to say in just a couple of moments, as soon as we finish with the news, we'll be talking to Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, who's live with us in the studio. Lots to talk to her about this Henry Novak case and where we go from here. Does she agree with Keir Starmer, or does she agree with Nigel Farage, who seem to take very different approaches to the issue of Novak's death and how we go about dealing with it? And how much are the Tories to blame for the fact that we've got this woke diversity teaching in our police force anyway? That's coming up. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and whether you're listening on DAB radio or on smart speaker or watching on YouTube or your connected device, very, very much appreciate you joining us. Lots to talk about. If you've missed anything from the show, go to my YouTube page. You can hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. So much to talk about in this, and it starts right now with my guest live in the studio. I'm delighted to say is Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative Party leader. A very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. Lots to talk about. Now, I know you have literally just come from a meeting with the family of Henry Novak, the young 18-year-old lad who lost his life after being stabbed to death by Vikram Digwal. But of course, we have the awful, awful body cam image that you've been talking about this week. We've been talking about, the whole country's been talking about, showing how the police, failed to care for him, failed to believe him, and told him, I don't think you have, mate, when he said he'd been stabbed. Can you reveal to us at all your meeting with the family, because so much of the political discourse, certainly at PMQs yesterday, has been about many people, including the Prime Minister, telling us we're not allowed to discuss this issue because the family have told us not to.
Right. The family are meeting the Prime Minister later, so it's not just me that they're meeting. I do want to start off with that. What they want is for us to talk about it in a dignified way, because this is their little boy. You know, they kept calling him their little boy, and they want their boy to be associated with positivity, not negativity, despite what is a real tragedy. And they do want us to talk about this. They do think that a lot of things have gone wrong and a lot of things need to be fixed. It's how we talk about it. It's the tone that is important, not avoiding difficult conversations. And that's something which I promised them that I would do. They are an extraordinary family. It's one of the most heartbreaking meetings I've ever had. And bear in mind, Julia, I've met many bereaved families, the parents whose children have killed themselves after, social media, activity, those whose children have been murdered. This is the first time I've spoken to a family who actually watched the murder of their child on...
Because it was also on the video, it was on the phone belonging to Henry Novak.
Yes, who saw it. And one of the hardest things for them was allowing that footage to be released, because once you put the footage out there, you don't know what will happen. People will use it in all sorts of different ways. But what they wanted was for people to see what happened, because something has gone very wrong with knives, with policing, and also with the sentence as well. Those were the three things.
And we know that there is now a review of the sentence, whether it was too lenient, and when there's talk about knives and the fact this was a Sikh man carrying knives with a, basically a religious get-out clause. People are querying that. OK. In terms of, obviously we all want to be respectful to the family. I mean, they're the most important people here. But the conversation about Henry's death isn't, with all due respect to them, about just Henry. It's about what happens with policing generally, and it's about our children as well, my audience's children, and whether they face two-tier policing. Yesterday in the House of Commons in PMQs, you chose actually in PMQs to talk, other than paying tribute to Henry Novak and his family, you chose to talk about welfare costs rather than talking about this case. The Prime Minister praised you. He absolutely did the opposite when it came to Nigel Farage, who warned, he said, about wider unrest after what happened in Southampton. The Prime Minister told him off, basically, slapped his hand, chastised him for causing division. He's told Elon Musk off for X division. Is it right for either the family and or the Prime Minister to tell either political leaders or indeed commentators like myself or ordinary members of the public, our audience right now, your voters, other parties' voters, what they can and can't think and what they can and can't say about this story?
No one can tell anyone in this country what they can or cannot think. We believe in freedom of speech and freedom of thought. I think if a family says, has a request about the tone of a conversation, I think it is right to respect that. I know how I would feel if this had been my child and how I would want people to talk about it. I think that's important. And the Prime Minister is free to say what he thinks as well. He's free to disagree with Nigel Farage. What I don't want is for this to become a conversation about Keir Starmer or Nigel Farage or
but
me
it
or anyone
is.
else.
I mean, the Prime Minister accused Nigel Farage of politicising it, but he praised you for not politicising it. But it is, by definition, when we're talking about two-tier policing, a political issue.
It is a political issue, but it should not be used for the benefit of a political party. I am the one person who has been speaking about this for years. At a time, you will remember, Julia, when I came out and said we shouldn't. This Black Lives Matter movement.
In 2021,
this movement is not right. They're promoting critical race theory. That, of course, yes. You know, some people were saying Black lives don't matter. Look what's happening to us. There's so much systemic racism, and I said, of course, Black lives matter. But that's this movement, this BLM movement, is pushing things that are going to cause problems, and now we see that. I wrote a letter in 2023 to all public authorities saying there is no hierarchy of rights. Everybody is protected. A white man is protected by the Equality Act in the same way as a black woman. It is your race and your sex that is protected, not being black or being white, not being male or being female. That this act does not protect groups. The law is very clear. How people are interpreting the law, the guidance and all their independent sort of codes of practices, which ministers often can't get involved in, is where the problem has crept in. So we've got to look at that. We have to look at that.
And this is where the issue is, because we had the Prime Minister and we had the Chief of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Police saying categorically, both the PMQs and an interview, that there is no two-tier policing. An awful lot of our audience, I think an awful lot of your voters as well, would say, we can see it before our eyes, whether it's over the grooming gangs, shut up, don't talk about it, you're causing division, we're not going to police this. Whether it's over the Southport riots, whether it's over the policing of the Palestinian marches or the United Kingdom march.
And I've said it as well. We see the outcomes of police in trying to deliver equality end up treating people differently. And what I said is you've got to treat people equally. Okay. That's where you start.
When the police say categorically, and they're being investigated by the IOPC, who, by the way, have exactly the same training. So here we've got a government, got a Home Office and a civil service, IOPC, all of the police, every single policing organisation, NAPC, College of Policing, all different constabularies have exactly the same training. It is required training. You do not get promoted unless you play along with it. We've had a report in the Times today saying officers felt
you've got to give me a minute to come.
But the thing is, this was happening under the Tory watch. You may have been speaking out about it. It's happened for many, many years. And this training categorically states you must not treat people the same. You must not be colourblind. When they say it's not two-tier policing, when they categorically have documents in black and white saying you must treat people differently, they're lying, aren't they? The Prime Minister and the Chief of the Police...
You've got to give me a moment to comment, otherwise my time is going to run out. You need to listen to what I'm saying. I know your views on this. I have been very clear. They should not have this stuff. The race action plans, I sat with them, College of Policing, National Police Chiefs Council, and what did they say to me? They said everyone is calling us institutionally racist. I'm not here to say the police what the police is doing is right. I think that it is wrong. But what I'm saying is that when I was speaking out about this, where was everybody else? Lots of people, including in the media, were saying I should pipe down, look at all these terrible instances of racism. And I've said that, yes, there is racism, bad things will happen, but we need equality under the law. I'm asking them to sweep it away. That is my party's policy, no identity politics. But I'm also very worried about a lot of frontline police officers who can't tell what to do because they're being trained in a particular way. We need to start at the top, and we need to start with the guidance that goes out. We've my party talked about the Sentencing Council. The law does not ask for this stuff. It is all of this guidance that comes from the training, that comes from the senior police chiefs who are trying to achieve a different end. It's time to sweep it away. I do see different outcomes in policing. I've seen Jewish people treated differently from pro-Palestinian protests. I've seen trans activists treated differently from gender-critical activists, where the trans activists will actually put out signs saying kill J.K. Rowling and so on. It's absolutely disgusting. I see it even with Gypsy, Romani traveller communities, where they get away with a lot of stuff that nobody else
You put your bins out for an extra day, you get prosecuted, you could just park your caravan for years.
Exactly. Even in minor things like you go shoplifting, you're not investigated, but you get points if you're driving 21 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour zone. Something has gone wrong. What I don't want is for us to make a boy's death a party political issue. I'm very happy to have an argument with Keir Starmer or Nigel Farage about what's going wrong with policing. But I don't want to drag this boy into it.
Take the debate on to
onto
leaving
the
him
issues,
behind.
not onto Henry, and that is something that the family have asked for. It was very, very emotional, very heartbreaking when they said that he was a good boy, that he was someone who had friends of different backgrounds. They have friends who are Sikh. They can see that this murderer, I don't even say his name, has created all sorts of problems with peaceful Sikh people who've been minding their business for hundreds of years. And we need to make sure that the police, who have lost a lot of trust, now start fixing that the police have a lot to fix. They want to see an investigation. They want the IOPC to look into things. That's something that my party has called for. But let's not drag Henry into this.
Okay, leave that aside. But again, we've got an issue where we have this training.
What's the thing you're most worried about? I want you to tell me what it is.
The thing I think many of my audience and many voters are most worried about is that we do have a system where we have a political class, largely a media class, civil service, policing, everything across the board, where they are imbued with this culture, I would say poisoned with this throughout the whole body politic, this view that DEI, this is the ultimate thing, this fear that being accused of being a racist is the worst possible thing. And with all due respect, you know perfectly well, you've been around the block enough times to know that you would have got a free pass as a Tory minister who is black to say the things that a white minister had said it would have been accused of racism. You know that's what happens.
I was accused of racism. They called me, the Labour MP Dawn Butler was retweeting things that I was the blackface of white supremacy. Please don't let your viewers think that I had an easy time. I had death threats, I had people attacking, and that's why a lot of people stay quiet. It's not easy to stick your head above the parapet.
People do not trust that anyone's going to get to the root of this if everyone investigating and everyone in charge believes the same stuff.
Well, I don't believe that. My party doesn't believe that. I have said we're taking the identity politics out. A lot of the people in my party who agreed with this stuff have gone to reform. Look at Robert Jenrick, who was saying it's okay to take the knee. When I was out there putting myself on the line, and it was difficult because people are afraid. There was one person in number 10 who gave me backing, a lady called Munira Mirza. Lots of people were telling me to pipe down, and I said, I'm not piping down. Someone needs to speak up about this.
What about the hypocrisy of the likes of Keir Starmer, who, when he was leading the opposition, wrote to Boris Johnson during Black Lives Matter, basically talking about how we need to take the concerns of the black community seriously, and they talked about their anger.
Julia, you've got to let me come in. You've got to let me come in. This is what I'm saying. That they need to bring the same urgency that they brought to a man who didn't even come from this country, didn't live here, an incident that didn't happen here, George Floyd. They were very passionate about it. I want to see the same thing happen for Henry. That's what he deserves. I'm saying that we need to be consistent. The rules that applied then, when I said I don't want people weaponizing race for black people, I don't want them weaponizing it for white people either. I'm against both sides of the coin weaponizing this. I want equality under the law. I have given speeches about separatism. This is what my party is doing. We've done a review on the Equality Act. I'll be talking about that in due course. We can do this. We can get it right. But it is not just the civil service and so on who do this. There's a lot in the public where people just don't understand. People don't understand this stuff, and we need to educate them. They're bringing all this language about decolonization and white privilege and so on into education. Our children are being taught things that are not true. Our history is being distorted. There are good things and bad things that happened. We've got to be honest about the good and the bad, not try and rewrite our history, especially along American narratives. We've got our own history. Let's talk about that.
I would agree with all of that. However, you seriously saying that if you were leading the Conservative Party and you won the next election, which on the current polls, I know couple of years, 3 years is a long time in politics, is not looking likely unless perhaps a coalition with Reform, which is looking less and less likely given the state of the play between the two parties at the moment, that you could ever achieve any of this when it is so ensconced in our whole civil society.
I can, and I know exactly what needs to be done. But the reason why people can trust me is that when I was in government, they saw me doing that work anyway. I'm not changing. I'm not flip-flopping like everybody else. I've been consistent. What I said then still applies now, and I will fight for all of your viewers' children. I'm fighting for mine as well. I don't want them growing up in a society where there are different rules for different people.
Do you understand why some people want to go out and go to a protest, peaceful protest, but also why some people, and I'm sure we all condemn violence, throwing stuff at the police, abusing the police,
absolutely
unacceptable. That actually goes as a given. But do you understand why some people, everyone was apparently understanding why black people would feel that way after George Floyd. A lot of the politicians condemning those people in Southampton didn't feel that way a few years ago when it was a different group of people rioting. Do you understand why Nigel Farage, for instance, would say that this may be the beginning of wider unrest?
So I'm angry, Julia. The family are angry. Everybody who has seen that video or even heard the story understandably will be angry. But the job of politicians is not to tell people, go out and be angry. People have a right to protest. I think that actually people coming out and showing solidarity with the family, showing they're upset about it, sends a signal to political leaders. What it shouldn't be is us whipping up people's rage. It is not my job to tell people to be angry. It is my job to help fix the problem. And that's what I want to do. That's the difference between Conservatives and Reform. Conservatives are saying, there's a problem, people are angry, let's fix it. Reform is saying, be angry. Be angry is not a solution. And that's what annoyed me. And, you know, for all those people who say, oh, you're criticising Nigel Farage, we should be able to disagree. I should be able to disagree with Nigel Farage. Sometimes he says some things that make sense. If he says something that I disagree with, I'm going to say it. He's not the king. He's not the king who I can't criticise. If Keir Starmer says something, the king's my boss. I'm not criticising. Also, I think he's fabulous. If Keir Starmer says something that is bad, I will criticise. If Nigel Farage says something that is bad, I will criticise. But that's my job. I don't want the family being dragged into it. And I don't want the public having to get wider unrest because of it. It's not good for the public. It's not good for the police who are not instead of solving crimes, they're then having to police, you know, violence, protests and so on. So that's what I'm saying. But I want people to know that I am determined to fix this. I think there is a responsibility for me also as a black woman in public life, probably the most senior black person in public life, to say that this is not something that black people want either. We want equal treatment under the law, not special treatment. And it is those people who are talking about special treatment for one group or another that are the problem, and I will always disagree with them and I will always fight them.
Kemi Badenoch, Conservative Party leader, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Your reaction to what she had to say, get your calls in now, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
They found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:22 is the time. Philip Ingram back in the hot seat, former senior military intelligence officer. After Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, who got a lot of praise from the Prime Minister this week, been quite a big spat with Nigel Farage. She was saying it's not about us, it is about the family. She was very, very clear. She has just literally came from a meeting with the family of Henry Novak, meeting with all of them, with Lucy, Mark and Katie, Henry Novak's mother, father and stepmother, and talked about their courage being extraordinary and what a heartbreaking meeting it was. And she was very, very, very keen to stress how basically, you know, it's how we talk about their son. They refer to their son as a little boy, and how heartbreaking it was, and the tone of the debate. Now, we know that the Prime Minister to meet privately with the family as well, so it's not a party political issue. He's meeting with the two big party leaders. But what did you make of what she had to say, Philip?
I took a, you know, she's said an awful lot of common sense things, you know, and she explained very clearly how actually whenever she was in government beforehand, she had started to try and deal with a lot of these issues.
Yep.
But there were so many other people that were coming in from further woke ideas that were unbalancing her, trying to stop the diversity that was coming into the training, so you weren't getting equality across the board in the way public bodies are dealing with people.
Yep.
She talked an awful lot of common sense.
Yeah, and again, when you criticise the Conservatives for not having dealt with this issue and allowed it to massively explode under them over their 14 years in power, and again, I called out Nigel Farage of this yesterday online with putting out an attack video, basically that, you know, Kemi Badenoch, oh yeah, but you said Black Lives Matter. I mean, it was genuinely within a long conversation about, you know, this shouldn't be about colour, blah, blah, blah. I mean, she was making those points when most frontline politicians were not, as indeed we were doing on air here at Talk. Let's go straight to the calls now. Matthew is in Bolton. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Yes, good morning, Julia.
Good afternoon.
Holding the fort, though.
Can I just ask, what did you make of what Kemi Badenoch had to say?
Yeah, Kemi, I think she's way off. I think they're all way off. Blaming Mr. Farage is more gaslighting. Because
did she blame? I don't think she did blame Nigel Farage. I mean, the Prime Minister did.
No, yesterday she had a pop at Nigel. She had a pop saying he was making it political. It is political.
Yeah, was that a point I made?
Yeah, of course it's political, because it's political decisions that we're in this mess.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science, but they always want to distract us from what the issue or the problems are onto something else. And Nigel Farage is not the issue. The issue is Henry being murdered and being allowed to bleed to death on the scene without any first aid or basic life support. That is criminal.
Well, the video stops at the point to which they did actually then go on to give a treatment. But again, the coroner is now going to look into whether or not actually the failure to treat and the handcuffing and the treatment, which we saw on that body cam footage, contributed to his death. Because some pathologists have said they believe that the pathology report contained in the court case was not the full story.
Okay, and I'd like to point out that the response highlights two-tier, the response of the authorities trying to censor what's discussed about, how it's discussed. Yeah. There was no censorship during the George Floyd
there was, because anyone who didn't say Black Lives Matter and agree with it, I can assure you, they were trying to censor us when we were talking about it, saying this what a nonsense this was.
On your point of view, dependent on the person who was wanting to make the point, then you could pretty much say anything. I got a tweet up this morning, Julia, and it was from the Police Chiefs Association, and it's from 2020, and it's there in colour fonts. We stand with the the actions taken against George Floyd. You know,
was that we get against the actions? Yeah, exactly. And again, why anyone felt the need to get involved? Something happened at 4,000 miles away. And again, you know the ironic thing. Genuinely, that whole court case, the man who quite rightly, the police officer, got sent to prison for kneeling on his neck. It was absolutely horrific crime. There wasn't even any racism. He was never accused of racism, no evidence of racism. He'd actually done it to white people before. This is the thing. It was turned into a race crime, and it wasn't a race crime. It was just a nasty, brutal police officer. But there we are. Appreciate your call, Matthew. Thank you very much. Very interesting point there. That the response highlights the fact that it's two-tier. Herbie is in Harrow. Hello, Herbie.
Yes, good afternoon, Julie.
Afternoon.
I mean to say, what should have been said yesterday by Sir Keir Starmer was he should have had a go at Nigel. He should have said the situation that has arisen is completely out of order and it's not acceptable. We'll have this inquiry to find out exactly why and how it happened so it never happens again.
Yeah.
And to show we are a united country, not divided, we'll hold a minute's silence for this poor chap that was murdered by this unfortunate person, and that would have said it all. Don't get involved.
I don't. You know what? I completely disagree. I don't approve of minute's silence for anyone other than our fallen war heroes. I hate all this minutes. I don't want terrorist victims or murder victims.
Show respect, though, Julia. That's all.
No, you don't have to. No, we don't have to show respect by having a minute's silence. Is that is very specific about people who've given their lives and have chosen. I've always opposed it. I don't like. Whenever we've had to hear when we've had minute's silence for victims of terrorism, I've always refused to introduce it because I've said no. I don't approve of it. I don't. I think it's wrong. I think it diminishes what our war heroes do. And anyway, why do we choose one? Why choose one victim and not another?
Well, we did it for George Floyd, didn't we?
No, I didn't.
Well, no, you didn't. No, and a lot of people didn't, I suppose. But the thing is, though, he approached it the wrong way. He's dividing the nation and he's dividing the country. There was a mistake made and it should have been highlighted. That's what it was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The one who's doing the most dividing is the Prime Minister, no doubt at all in my mind about that. Absolutely. I'm trying to get to look some more messages, but I think I've run out of some of the messages that I've got printed out from you, but lots of you getting in touch. Could we possibly squeeze in one more call? Is there anybody we can get on just so we can take another call before we go to a quick break? That'd be actually no, I don't think we can. We'll go to a quick break now. Then we're going to be talking to journalist and author Jake Wallace-Simons about that call for NHS staff to be banned from wearing any pro-Palestinian badges, pro-Israel badges, any political insignia at all. I'd love to hope that will actually happen. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say on that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:31 is the time. Let's talk about the NHS because the government's independent advisor on anti-Semitism, Lord Mann, has put out a report this morning saying that NHS staff should be banned from wearing political badges on their uniforms, including pro-Palestinian symbols and indeed pro-Israeli symbols, as part of proposals to help tackle anti-Semitism. Let's talk about all of this with journalist and author Jake Wallace-Simons. A very good afternoon to you, Jake.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. I have to say, this is a long time coming, and Lord Mann has been very, very clear on this. He talked about the anti-Semitism we are seeing in the NHS, and I want to talk about that, but he said, the NHS should not be a place where you bring in your views. The stronger the views, the bigger the problem. And whether it's a pro-Palestinian badge, a pro-Israel badge, he says, don't wear either. Here's my question to you. Whoever thought it was acceptable or a good idea for taxpayer-funded wage staff in the public sector, dealing with often very vulnerable, frightened people who are very unwell, to be proclaiming their political views, whatever they are, on their uniforms?
Yeah, I can't believe that the NHS isn't depoliticised already. Political symbols should not be allowed on the uniforms of doctors or nurses for quite obvious reasons that shouldn't need to be spelled out. But look, this is 2026. We will have to spell them out. It's because they are divisive. Because if you are a very strong, let's say, Green Party supporter and you're a doctor, you've got a massive Green Party logo, and somebody comes in, a patient who is vulnerable, who is a Reform Party supporter, that patient is not going to feel comfortable getting proper care from you because of your political opposition to them. And that's all the more the case when it comes to Israel and Palestine, which is not only a far more divisive issue, but also often has racial components to the argument. And if people are not happy for doctors or nurses to wear Israel badges, I assume that would raise quite a few eyebrows in various different segments of our community, then people should not be happy to be treated by doctors and nurses with Palestine logos on their uniforms either. And I note that the objection to Lord Mann's proposals is based on the suggestion that Palestine supporters will be disproportionately affected by this ban. Why? Because they're the only people fanatical enough to be wearing these badges in the first place, which says a lot about the spirit of this debate.
It is extraordinary, actually, when I do see people in public places and they wear their badges, and it's a certain type. There's a certain type of person who's oh, look at me, look at my virtues. I always make a point of telling them what I think of them and their badge and their views, because that's me, as you well know, in public and private life. But you think you're proclaiming your virtue, you're literally doing the opposite of it, and they think they are doing something else. But this is the reality. It's totally irrelevant to their job. When you go into a hospital, you're wanting to find out you're getting cancer, or if you've got a broken leg or not, what treatment you need, or a nurse or a porter wheeling you to an operation or anything. At no point is your political views remotely relevant to your job. And I would say the same for any frontline. In fact, no, anyone whose wages that I'm forced to pay through my taxes, in any office, back room, front room, whatever. I don't want to know your political views. Leave them at home. Leave them in your car when you get out to go into your office car park. I don't want to know if you're a teacher. I don't want to know if you're an NHS staff. I don't want to know if you're a civil servant. I don't want to know if you work at the DVLA. It's irrelevant. But this is the thing. These people will say, what about my freedom of speech? What would you say to that?
I would say exercise it by all means outside of work times when you're not representing a public institution catering for vulnerable patients. Yeah. And there's a big backstory here, which is that the level of anti-Semitism in the NHS, as in many political institutions, is running out of control. Every single one of those hate marches, or many of them, have medics dressed in their scrubs at the forefront, often shouting the most extreme anti-Zionist, shall we give it that term, slogans. We've had stories of Jewish patients, a Jewish young boy, being forced out of a bed to lie on the floor by a nurse wearing a pro-Palestine badge. We've had all sorts of medics, doctors throughout the NHS making the most extreme statements, some of whom actually have been linked to terror organisations like Hamas. Like all public institutions, they have a left-wing bias. They're infested with radicalism and even hardline Islamism. And that is the climate in which, ask yourself how you would feel as a Jewish person, to use that awful phrase, a recognisably Jewish person, walking into a hospital and being confronted by a host of doctors and nurses, some of whom might be Muslim, some of whom might not be, but all of whom are wearing Palestine badges. Yeah. You would not feel that you would get equal, fair and compassionate
because
treatment.
We know it's not just about Palestine. We know how it impacts. And you say a lot of these videos we've seen online where we've had doctors and nurses openly, not even covering their faces, not even covering their identities, openly stating that, they wish death on Jewish people. You wouldn't go to that doctor.
Yeah, we've even seen doctors and nurses, certainly in Australia and elsewhere, going online and stating that they would not treat Israelis or Jews because they want them to die.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of radicalism that is infecting the caring
And this is a profession where literally the doctors of, one country, when they're at war with another country, treat the wounded of the other country. This is, we have, people, we have, by the way, Israeli doctors treat the wounds of, Palestinian terrorists, for goodness sake.
One prime example of that is Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, who was the architect of October the 7th, while he was in an Israeli prison, was treated by Israeli doctors for a brain tumour that saved his life under the Hippocratic Oath. And he went on to be released in a prisoner swap and then organised October the 7th. That says it all. That
does say it all. But it's interesting, some of the people that Lord Mann spoke to, a doctor who spoke to him under strict anonymity, saying that he was the only Jewish doctor in the hospital where he worked, as far as he was aware. And he came in one day to find his locker where he kept his uniform smeared with bacon fat.
Yes, it doesn't surprise me at all.
And that's the terrifying thing, isn't it? But again, I don't think it's just the NHS. And it does sound like the new Health Secretary, James Murray, said he would accept all the recommendations here. And again, this, for me, it's just very, very simple. Don't want to see your politics. Doesn't matter what it is. Keep it out of your office space. What we're going to need, though, is hospitals to enforce it, and very strictly, very clearly. Once suspended, second out. But the message has got to be very clear. But we also need it in schools as well. We need it in all public sector
and
bodies.
Universities. I mean, I really think that universities should be depoliticised. It's outrageous. Jewish students at universities are being intimidated. They're seeing Free Palestine and pro-Palestinian activism all over the place. Not just from the students, but also from the lecturers. It's a hotbed of anti-Jewish and anti-Western, anti-British radicalism in our universities, in the NHS, even in our schools. And it's only a matter of time before this begins to lead to violence and, dare I say it, even a fatality.
But Jewish people, again, already excluding themselves. I know a Jewish girl myself very, very well in her late teens, wanted to apply to the London School of Economics. Her own sister is there and said, I wish I wasn't here. I don't feel safe. I mean, that is utterly unacceptable. And it'd be unacceptable if it was a Muslim saying it. It'd be unacceptable if it was a black person or a white person or a gay person or anything else. It would be unacceptable. Universities should not be places where that is the case.
That's exactly the point. I mean, these people, pose as great humanitarians, as the epitome of virtue, and yet what they're doing is imposing a kind of neo-fascism where only certain types of views are welcome. Other people, other races, other people with different political views are not only not welcome, but they deserve to be hounded out, marginalised and persecuted. That is not an open society. They are working against our values, using our freedoms to undermine our freedoms rather than the opposite.
I also want to ask about Zach Polansky, the Green Party leader. We've had quite a pleasant time not having to hear about Zach Polansky lately, haven't we? After he criticised police for, basically bringing down a terrorist in Golders Green.
Oh, yes.
Zach Polansky has urged the government to track the movements of British citizens who've recently served in the Israeli Defence Force, the IDF. He signed an open letter demanding that a database be created of the 2,000 dual British-Israeli nationals called up for service since the terror attacks by Hamas on October 7, 2023. In a letter to the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood and Yvette Cooper, the Foreign Secretary, organised by an organisation, a campaign called Declassified UK. They say this is in case war crimes cases can be brought as a result of IDF operations in Gaza. I mean, accusing me of war crimes, I'm sure you've been accused of war crimes too. And of course, we're both going to get our 7,000 shekels, aren't we, for both of us for having this conversation. I mean, that's the madness. But I mean, look, we have plenty of citizens in this country who are dual nationals. If you are a national or dual national of Israel, you are required, like all Israelis, or pretty much all Israelis, to do your national service. And now they're saying that basically you're a potential, war criminal if you have done your duty defending the country of which you are partially a national.
Yeah, I mean, this is the inverted reality in which people like Zach Polansky live. Fighting for Israel, if you're a dual citizen, is not illegal any more than fighting for Ukraine against Russia is illegal. In both cases, you're fighting on the side of democracy and freedom against tyranny. The people who go and fight in Israel very bravely are on the front line against jihadism, the sort of jihadism that has come for us on various occasions on London Bridge, Westminster Bridge, 7-7, the Manchester Arena. They are doing a noble job fighting that jihadism. And the idea that they would then be tracked and hounded in a Zach Polansky government statement is just an example of the inverted racism that wishes to bring Israel down as the first gesture towards bringing down Britain and the West. I mean, shame on Zach Polansky. If I had my way, Zach Polansky would be the one who's being tracked, him and his party, because it's far more likely to harbour radicalism than any kind of Israeli community in Britain. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Jake Wallace-Simons, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Philip Ingham's listening to all of that, former senior military intelligence officer. I mean, presumably, when you were serving in the military, you don't get to sort of have your little badge of who you support, and even your little blue I heart the NHS badge, do you?
No, you can't do anything. You have to be completely apolitical with a big P and a small p, so you can't come out and support any different groupings. And that should be common practice across all public bodies. You should not be allowed to express your political opinions, whether they be party political opinions or your political opinions, whether they be for different causes that are out there, whilst you are in uniform and representing the organisation, whether that be in person or in your social media outputs.
It's so basic.
It's very basic.
And what do you make of, as a former military man, Zach Polansky, a man who, I mean, probably, has a battle with his anorak zip every single morning and loses it, saying that Britons who served in the IDF, as they're entirely entitled to do, should be tracked in case they face war crimes?
Zach Polansky's on a different planet, but you said that...
Sadly, he isn't. Sadly, we're stuck with it.
You said he was doing this in line with the site Declassified. I know Declassified. It's one of the biggest disinformation and stirring sites that there is possible.
Imagine my surprise.
Yes, and Zach Polansky, taking them seriously, he's just undermined any little credibility that he may have had. Hopefully he's lost at least 50% of the 2 voters that he would have ever had.
Well, I hate to tell you, he's far more popular than that. But again, I think the more coverage we have of Zach Polansky and his views, I think I'm a great believer, a disinfectant of bright light is always what's good for any politician of any political hue.
Yes.
Up next, we're going to take a quick break, and then I said we swapped things around a bit. Well, Kemi Bade not coming in the studio at midday, and so we're going to be taking your calls up next. Try and get as many as I can about not just what Kemi Bade not had to say, but crucially what's all about Henry Novak, of course, and of course DEI, how we get that out of the system, and all of that. First up, though, I must tell you, we have the FIFA World Cup kicking off next Thursday, and our friends at TalkSport are sending you and a friend straight to New York City with Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. It's the ultimate trip to watch England face Panama live at the MetLife Stadium. Return flights, hotel, match tickets and spending money all taken care of. Plus, Adidas is throwing in the official Treyonda match ball and a fresh pair of boots. So don't miss out. Here's how to enter.
For your chance to win, head to our friends at talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close on the 12th of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksportwin.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
they found a label now, Ian, which allows them to sit at home on tablets, wasting their time.
Wow.
You know, you've got the welfare state, I've already said, wonderful thing, isn't it? But a safety net, not a way of life.
When you're talking about crimes as vicious as rape, if someone is capable of doing that, they're a threat to society.
If they don't know that all of these things are wrong, then by definition, we need them off the streets.
This is the worst one I've ever come across.
But it's where you've got with this woke, fluffy, liberal, progressive nonsense about anti-racism.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:47 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with me, and a lot of you are on the phone. I was trying to get to as many as I can before the top of the hour. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Robert is on the line. He's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert. What do you want to say?
I'm very disappointed in Kelly Badenoch. She was showboating, self-promoting. It wasn't my fault. I did try to do this. I was the only one who... Nothing. They need to be swept under the carpet, earn the Labour Party, and we need to bring Nigel in very quick. If they did get in, she wouldn't do anything. She wouldn't do anything. They're leaning more to the left as well. And she'd be the first casualty if they ever got power. She'd be gone.
You think that's very interesting take? I mean, in her defence, I mean, she's not here to defend herself, which I'm sure she would. She was one of the few Tories speaking out against this when she got abused, as she pointed out in the interview. The Black Lives Matter and all the DEI and all the wokery, trans stuff and all of that. She was one of the few people who did speak out about it. So I mean. Well, I mean, again, I agree with you. I worry that any party won't deal with this, but...
They've got to take a lot of responsibility for this. The Labour Party have only been in 2 years.
I agree with you.
It seems like a lot more.
I put that, but doesn't. It feels like about 20 years, mate. As I put it to her, you know, your party, this happened under your party, and she said she was speaking. Her argument is, I'm in charge now, so what they were doing, the government that I was in was doing, is different from what I would do. That's what her defence is. Do you just not believe her?
I don't believe she'll be allowed to be honest with you.
By who?
Well, the rest of the party, because they're leaning over to the left, and they will continue to lean over to the left. I mean, I can't even think of anybody of any quality who's in the Conservatives. I did used to think that she was, and I was quietly hoping that she'd join Reform, but she's a showboater. You know, I can see she's a showboater, and she used this as a party political broadcast this morning. I'm quite disappointed in her, actually.
OK, very, very damning words there. Thank you for that. Philip Ingram, just your response to that? We had quite a positive response to what she had to say, didn't we?
Exactly. You know, having been in the studio and watched it very closely, I thought she was being very genuine. I took completely the opposite view. I thought it was right of her to remind people that she had tried to deal with it. She was one voice. And
that is fair. The evidence, I mean, the evidence is there.
Yeah. And you know, she explained very carefully how, you know, this was a political issue that had to be discussed, but not to use you know, the victim who was horribly murdered as the main stick to beat this political issue with. Yeah,
and again, having come from meeting with the family specifically, it's about the tone. It's about and again, when we discussed the fact, you know, I'm not having anybody, even the father of this dead young boy. I'm not having anyone tell me what I can and can't talk about. That is absolutely crucial. And certainly not having the sodding Prime Minister tell me what I can talk about. Robert, great call, though. Thank you very much. Okay, we take all views here. Callum is on the line. He's in Leeds. Callum, you want to talk about this two-tier policing claim? Just if you did have a chance to listen to what Kemi Badenoch had to say, what did you make of it?
In my opinion, good afternoon, Julia.
Good afternoon, my lovely.
In my opinion, I think in ways Kemi's right, but then at the same time she's making herself out to be something that she's not. We've got to remember now, we had 14 years under the Conservatives. It could have been fixed over them 14 years. They had the chance, they've spoiled it. Conservatives, in my opinion, now are no longer a thing. And like Robert was just saying then, he was hoping that Kemi jumped ship and joined Reform.
Yeah.
She should have done, because Conservatives are done. They're absolutely done. And what we've got to remember now in this modern society, as we call it,
there's too much wokery going on. And it was also under the Conservatives why this started happening.
Oh, I mean, it's exploded under them.
Yeah, we did. And you know what? The police, in my opinion now, the police spend more time monitoring social media than they actually do go out and policing the actual people. The police need to get to grip and realise that, actually, policing is not on social media with free speech. Policing starts with going out within the communities and looking after the communities, sorting out these people that are going out robbing people's houses, sorting out antisocial behaviour, sorting out all these crimes that are going on. But the police are too bothered about these days, about diversity.
And the fact that we get these amazing stats that the most police officers haven't arrested anyone, not in the last week, in the last year. I'm just sort of, what are they doing all day? I mean, other than the fact they're just sitting in their DEI training. Do you think, I mean, when the Prime Minister and indeed the Hampshire Police Chief says there is no two-tier policing, do you think they actually believe that?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it whatsoever. And I don't think...
You think they're lying? They know it's two-tier, but they're just lying?
I absolutely lying. And I think the country also, well, apart from the far left, you know, I think that the country now are waking up to seeing that there's actually two-tier policing going on. And you know what, Julia? It's not just that the fact there's two-tier policing, it's the average British person that is actually now being labelled as... You get labelled as a racist for pointing out the real things, the real issues. And that's the reality. That's the sad reality that we live in these days. You know, you're not allowed. You can't have an opinion these days with the police.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is absolutely the issue, isn't it? I really appreciate that, Callum. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Steve, who is in Clacton-on-Sea. And Steve, you want to talk about the NHS and all this, wearing of badges and politicising the NHS.
The thing is, if you have a Star of David on in support of Israel, the Jewish people, they talk in different languages to each other. They don't treat people. To the staff. So we're talking about porters, we're talking about nurses. They treat people differently, and we should all be treated the same.
Yeah, I mean, just exactly. I mean, are you Jewish yourself?
No, I'm just my closest friend, for most of my life, 20 years ago on MSN Messenger, I met a Jewish guy, and we've been friends ever since. And it's everything in this country is just wrong.
He wouldn't feel comfortable, for instance, wearing anything identifiably Jewish in the hospital.
He wouldn't feel comfortable coming to Clacton wearing a. And
that's the difference, isn't it? Because we don't see, if you're say, I mean, I live in North London with very long Jewish area, lots of Muslims as well. But there isn't an issue with people who are wearing Stars of David going around attacking or abusing people who are openly not Jewish or particularly or possibly pro-Palestinian. But we do quite clearly see the opposite way around.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, isn't it, Steve? Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, I mean, just going back to that, that does feel like a very secondary story today. We're talking about this, but actually, in lots of ways, it's not. It's about, again, it's about an organisation, and this is the same as like the BBC and everywhere, where it's all part of this DI, this imbued thing that, certain views are acceptable views, and you have to hold these views, and it's virtuous, and you would be considered to be, you're one of the good people because you have a pro-Palestinian badge, you have the correct views on this, or you have a Black Lives Matter badge with a fist. Whenever there's a fist involved, not a good idea. And when you have all the correct views on this or that, and white people, horribly racist, empire, slavery, we're responsible for everything wrong. When people say they don't want politics in these public sectors, whether it's teaching or NHS or public service, what they mean is they don't want politics they don't approve of.
Yeah, and it's all linked. What is going on within the NHS, within our schools, leading to racism in the streets and all the rest of it.
And two-tier policing.
Two-tier policing and all the rest of it. It is all linked. And you start at the early stages in the schools, in the families, and work your way through. So we have to take all of this labelling things and putting people into different camps and all the rest of it and get rid of it. Stop it.
Just stop it. It's so unnecessary. Paul is in Burnley. Paul, you want to have your say on two-tier policing. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I want to highlight how the
the advice that the PCC gives to all police forces, how it contradicts basic justice. I want you to imagine and picture in your head the iconic statue of Lady Justice. In her hand, she's got a sword that represents the power and the authority of justice. In her other hand, she's got scales that represent equilibrium and the equity of justice. But she's blindfolded. And here's the key thing, Julia. Justice is supposed to be delivered without reference to wealth, power, influence and race. What does the advice say? We will not, if we want equity of outcomes, we won't treat people the same, and we won't be colourblind.
It specifically says that. But this is the thing: you've got a police chief, we've got a prime minister saying categorically there's not two-tier policing. When, as I keep saying, in black and white, their own documents tell us the exact opposite.
When those police attended Henry Novak's situation, they ignored the three basic ABCs of policing. Accept nothing, believe nobody, check everything. And what they did, they let their DEI training do their thinking for them.
Absolutely.
What they did, they believed the brown man, they didn't accept what the white man was saying, and they checked nothing.
I couldn't agree more. Paul, thank you so much. I'm going to squeeze in Chris in Derbyshire. Chris, you want to talk about Kemi Badenoch? I've got about a minute. What do you want to say?
I just wanted to say that I agree with what Kemi had to say about it not becoming a party political issue. I understand people's anger, but what I would say is now's the time to get politically organised and get the people who push the kind of ideas that led to this tragedy out of office.
How do we do that?
I would say if you know that there are candidates that are against the kind of ideas that led to this tragedy, then promote them.
But the people in charge of promoting are the people who've all signed up to this stuff.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, that the only thing we can do is use our vote and use what we have as the tools to...
You're right. That's all we've got. So and our voices in between those votes. Chris and Derbyshire, thank you so much. Glad we got a lot of your calls on air. I know there's lots I didn't get to. Apologies for that. A lot of you wanting to have your say on all the big topics. Philip Ingram, I mean, this is it. You know, people need to speak out. We need to have change. But if you've got a Prime Minister, police chiefs who think there's not a problem, you're not going to get change.
Our politicians are out of touch. Our chief